Afternoon, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the Two Mikes on Talk Sport. So Porky has finally done it. It's relentless Mickey taking a Bobcat Bob has forced him out of the job at Swansea. After mocking and ridiculing Bobcats' Americanisms for soccer instead of football, the axe finally fell on Bradley last night. We'll be finding out who's going to be next for the job. And we'll be asking how long before the same thing happens to Who Are You? Ian Holloway at QPR 08717 22 3344. Also coming up on the show, it's Ask Porky. So if you've got a problem that needs solving, you've come to the right place. Tweet us at the Two Mikes or look for us on our Facebook page. You're listening to the Two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. I am Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. It's time to say a very, very good morning to the man who got Bobcat Bob Bradley the sack. Very good afternoon to you.
I'm not rising to that.
What do you mean?
I'm sorry, I'm not rising to that. That's a ridiculous statement.
Well, it's all over Twitter.
If you don't mind me saying, what you did was you really grabbed my coattails there. All I did in a scientific experiment was point out that Bob Bradley did not speak the sort of English language, the sort of English in the English language, that would endear him to players in a dressing room at Swansea. It was almost impossible for them to understand a lot of the time what he was saying. Even now.
I think you'll find that was not the issue at all.
Even now, when he's, when he's had to accept, the bitter pill of defeat and the bitter pill of being... Well,
hounded
derailed.
Out of his,
I'm going to say derailed.
Hounded out of his job, I'm going to say
derailed.
Well,
he's actually said, I knew the clock was ticking as soon as I came in. People don't normally talk like that in this country, okay? And
there's lots of foreign managers in this country who talk in a different style.
On my radar, push the envelope.
There's a lot of different managers in this football league of ours, right, in the Premier League, who speak English as a second language, who speak a lot of different languages as well, and who speak in a completely different way. As I said to you yesterday, it's not about the fact that he was American, it was about the fact that he didn't talk in football terms.
He talked in American sports terms. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say this, but
hit the road.
Hit the road. It's a road game. But what he said, somebody said to him the other night, "Do you think you lost the locker room?"
Yeah.
Now, I do not mean this as a joke. He never found the locker room because we don't have locker rooms in English football stadiums. We have changing rooms.
Or dressing rooms.
Or dressing rooms or changing rooms. We do not have locker rooms because we don't have big, tall lockers where players go in when they've been sent off and they punch the hell out of the locker and all that kind of stuff.
When was the last time you were in a locker room?
Oh, I've been in plenty of changing rooms and dressing rooms. I've never been in a locker room.
Well, they must have lockers. Don't they have lockers?
No, they don't.
Sure?
the only club who has lockers with a combination safe on them is Chelsea, because the insurers came down to Cobham, their training centre, and when they looked around, they said, the watches that these guys wear are so expensive that unless you install personal safes with
right. So they have got lockers then.
With codes up, but they're not lockers in the sense of the locker room in America. They are they're safes actually to keep your valuables in. They have one player came in one day with jewellery amounting to £150,000.
Right.
Now, that at the time was covered by...
Kim Kardashian style.
It was covered by an insurance policy which basically said if anybody breaks into the changing room.
Yeah.
But there was over £1 million worth of jewellery and watches in the changing room, so they had to massively change the insurance policies. But getting back to Bob...
Not to mention Ashley Cole's gun.
Well, we won't get into that. But just going back to Bob, I'm sorry that he's gone, but...
You're calling him Bob now?
Yeah.
Well, as opposed to Bobcat, which is what you've been calling him for about the last 3 months.
Well, he was Bobcat Bob when he was, pushing that envelope. I mean, how would any English
Now he's
footballer...
been handed the envelope, of course.
Yeah, the P45, unfortunately.
PK45.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Got a few PKs and the 45s. Yeah.
Because a 45 in the US is a gun, isn't it?
Of course it is,
Colt 45.
Yeah, that's right. How would any English footballer know if you...
What will you do if he turns up looking for you, Bob Bradley? Bobcat Bob.
He's not going to.
He looks like a guy who could do you some damage.
No, he's a very rational man. The fact that he looks like a peanut head type sort of a guy does not...
A lot of people have said he looks a bit like Robocop.
Robocop, that's right. Yeah. You should not mistake for a man with aggressive tendencies.
How about this from D? Looking forward to Porky being hunted down and given a good shoeing by Bob Bradley now. It served the big gob to plank right.
No, I don't think so. Now, look, the people that you have to blame here from start to finish are the people who are running Swansea Football Club.
Indeed.
The new owners. Because it was a ludicrous appointment. Now, they are of American descent.
Yes. Well, they're Americans.
Exactly.
They're not actually of American descent. They are, in fact, Americans.
Well, I bet you their parents are American as well.
Well, they're Americans.
So they're American descent, aren't they?
Well, no, they're Americans.
Are they or not? Are they or are they
Americans.
not?
They're not of American descent. No, if you're of American descent, it means you're of another nationality, but originally your parents may have been American.
No. That's
Of what descent are you?
British.
You're of British descent.
English, actually, English.
So you're of
descent.
English descent.
Yes,
you're not actually English.
100%
you're Welsh.
Anglo-Saxon English. Anyway, let me get back to
Parry's a Welsh
name. The point
name,
is,
isn't it?
because they we'll agree with your interpretation for the moment.
Thank
because the owners of Swansea are American.
Yes.
They decided on the bright idea of an American owner.
Yeah.
But that's like us going over to America, buying the New York Jets, and then saying, I know, let's stick in an English coach into the New York Jets.
Absolutely.
Who wouldn't have a clue and would not be able to talk to his people in the locker room because they don't talk the same language.
Indeed.
It was a ludicrous decision.
Well, I actually think that he would have been a good manager had he been given enough time. I think they've sacked him far too early. He thinks they've sacked him far too early. The idea that somehow...
You've been on the old coq au vin last night.
The what?
You know, the old...
coq au vin?
Yeah.
That's a dinner.
That's
food.
right, yeah. But you drink a lot of strong port with it, don't you?
I didn't drink any port last night, no. I did have some very nice Italian red wine, though. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay. He joined Swansea, right, when they only had something like 4 points from 7 games. Yes. They were already 17th.
Yes.
Right? Now, he hasn't made them any
lower
worse.
Than that now, aren't they?
Well, I think they are, but he hasn't made them any worse.
Yeah.
The fact is he wasn't given the tools to finish the job. He wasn't able to sign anybody. He wasn't allowed to hang around for the January transfer window.
Do you think he'd ever have got them out the relegation
Yes,
zone?
I do, actually.
Rubbish.
I do.
Well, that is utter nonsense.
I don't agree with your take on it, and I don't agree with lots of other people's take on it. And what about all these maniacs who are out there on Twitter claiming that, nobody would have made fun of this guy if he was black, if he was not American, if he was Pakistani, if he was African. What a load of old cobblers.
Hang on. He was incompetent. That's why we were making fun of him. He was not able to do the job he'd been asked to do, and I don't blame him. I blame his employers. Now, the next massive mistake his employers could make, or his former employers, actually,
is to appoint another bad manager.
Oh, I mean, I can see it now, because they're American now, and they love all things English. So they like the Queen, they like Buckingham Palace.
They?
Yeah.
How'd you know that?
They like because the American people who come in and buy into business do like these things. They like the fact that the Derby is run here at Epsom in Stockbroker Belt and all that.
But they're in Wales, though.
The next thing...
Well, they're in Wales.
Yeah, it's British. And the next thing they're going to say is Roy Hodgson, what a boy. What is
Roy Hodgson would be a disaster.
What is his record?
Yeah.
And somebody says, well, actually, he used to be the national coach of England.
The
national coach of England!
It's a broken record.
We got to have that man here. Get that man here.
Yeah, well, according to people I've been talking to, right, Ryan Giggs and Chris Coleman are the front runners.
Anyway, they get Roy Hodgson in, and I'm trying to finish this story, and they say once he's in, it's great to have Roy Hodgson here. That guy's going to bring us glory. And then somebody says, yeah, what glory's that guy got in the game?
They're all sitting around in like some kind of bonanza type house.
Where
Hoss is talking.
And then somebody says...
He's a serious businessman.
And then somebody says, zilch, zero, zip. What do you mean, zip? Roy Hodgson is zip. What do you mean? He's never won nothing. He never won nothing, Hodgson. Who appointed him?
Was that your Hodgson? No, that's not your Hodgson.
Oh, that's the board of Swansea.
How about Nigel Pearson? How about Gary Rowett? How about Alan Pardew?
Well, Alan Pardew's come fresh off the back of being booted out of a different club for not being able to do the job of manager in the Premier League.
For having the worst record in not only the Premier League, but in any football league in this country.
Exactly, and the worst record even than...
Bobcat Bob.
Bobcat Bob.
Yeah.
And of all the choices now... I would go for Chris Coleman if I could and try and entice him to come to Swansea because I think he is a solid, incredibly impressive bloke as well as a manager. And it would be a great time for Chris Coleman to really consider his future with the opportunity because I don't know where he's going to go now as an international manager.
Yeah. Well, who knows? And also, where's Bobcat Bob going to go? I wonder if he's going to end up coming
America.
in to do some shows with his good mate Jim White, who seems to be in touch with him on a regular basis.
Well, he might do,
We'll get him in here. And then he would meet you. That would be great. Because you would then have to answer for all of the ridiculing and mockery that you have made of his voice, of his job, and of his manhood. Absolutely everything.
Do you know anything about that?
What?
That would be sensational.
This is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Here's a couple of tweets for you. Martin says, newsflash, Bob Bradley arrested for giving Kenny Rogers a good hiding.
Hey, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Look out, Porky. He's coming for you. Davey says, Porky got Bobcat Bob sacked. Blame him.
It's not my fault.
Ryan says, I've got the radio on at work and my dad, who isn't a football fan, just asked me, why is that guy talking like Deputy Dog?
Yeah, well, I got you now, boy. Yeah. In fact, unfortunately, somebody has got Bobcat Bob, right now, boy.
And Pete says, Peanut Head Porky just can't stop having a go. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that your relentless ridiculing of this man has driven him out of his job at Swansea, because they've obviously taken a lot of notice of it. There's quite a lot of football fans actually on Twitter at the moment saying, would you please put the similar curse on Norwich, on West Ham, on Blackpool, all of whom want to see some of the people go from the positions that they are in.
Well,
but right now...
Funny enough, just before you introduce our next guest, Nigel says, if you guys could run on about Alex Neil at Norwich and get him removed from the Norwich job, I'd be very grateful. We're not into that business.
Yes, no, indeed. And Matt says, oi, Porky, if Bobcat sends you to meet him in a restaurant in the Bronx, beware. It could be a hit. Alan Pardew for Swansea. Now, let's talk to Pete Cohen, who's a sports psychologist and motivational expert, because he's going to tell me, I'm pretty sure, that actually the way that Bobcat Bob spoke and the way that he addressed the team had nothing to do with his failure. Pete, a very good afternoon to you.
A very good afternoon to both of you.
Now, thanks, Pete.
Now, Mr. Parry here has been relentlessly ridiculing Bobcat
No, I haven't
Bob,
been ridiculing him.
For not having the right accent and for talking in Americanisms, which he says the footballers could not understand. Is there any possibility that could be true?
Well, listen, who knows? I don't know about you, but whenever I hear an American talking about football or soccer, even to this day, there's something in my brain that still goes, hey, you know what, this isn't right. You know, this isn't your sport. It's my programming, and that's how when I grew up, I loved to watch Americans. But one thing I didn't associate with Americans was football. But of course, things change. But, has that made any difference to anyone in the dressing room? Possibly.
No, Pete, I think you're absolutely right. If I'm listening to an American talking about a moonshot, OK, or if I'm listening to an American talking about, invading Cuba or something like that, then the accent fits perfectly, no problem, because there are issues that they're in charge of. When I hear an American talking... What are you laughing at?
Sort of invading Cuba.
Well, when they've used
they don't need to invade Cuba anymore because they've made their peace with Cuba.
I agree.
They've lifted the trade embargo.
Yeah, I know, but they used to have plans to invade Cuba. So what I'm saying is, Pete, take me as an English footballer. I'm in the Swansea dressing room. A guy walks through the door and says, you guys are going to push the envelope. I got you on my radar, and you will perform, or else you will hit Skid Row. Now, if I was an English footballer and the guy suddenly came and said that to me in that accent... You're absolutely right in what you've just said. Would your brain be able to respond to the message he was trying to get to you?
Well, let's face it, in the UK, we don't tend to be a nation that we don't tend to embrace positivity too much. I mean, I remember doing a workshop in San Francisco, and at the end I said, come on, everyone, let's go for it. And this guy jumps up and goes, yeah! Where?
High five.
Where are we going?
Yeah.
I was thinking, if I said that to a group of people in the UK, then the typical attitude will be, I'm not going anywhere, mate. I'm staying exactly. I'm staying.
But there's
exactly
been lots of adoption of Americanisms in this country. I don't think it's anything to do with so much his American sort of idioms. It's more to do with the fact that, as you were saying, Pete, when he talks about football, it doesn't sound like he's using the right terms, and that's what everybody's been picking up on. PK instead of penalty, game instead of match. A road game for an away game, that kind of thing. So it doesn't sound right, because we've got loads of foreign managers in the Premier League, but they all speak football, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is it's not always what you say, it's where you're coming from with what you're saying. And I'm sure he's coming from a place of passion and enthusiasm, but it sounded like he had a pretty tough job, as does any manager that comes into the Premier League, because the pressures are there, and if you haven't got the team and you haven't got everything else, and you haven't got the experience as well of...
Well, they're not very good, are they, Swansea? I mean, that's the bottom line, if you don't mind me saying so.
No, but they always were. They always were until Bob came along. They never finished lower than 12th in the Premier League.
What do you mean until Bob came along? They had 4 points when he came along from 7 games.
Yeah, but hang on. Before that, they'd had managers who had rescued them from lowly positions in the league. The reason that Bob's gone is it didn't look like he was going to be able to rescue them from that league. I mean, being a psychologist, Pete, I suppose you would say to the Swansea board, at least they've been incredibly positive in correcting what is clearly a mistake very early on.
Yeah, and I suppose if they've got any sense, they'll stop, look back, take some learnings from it, and look to possibly make better decisions moving forward, because that's all that you can do. You can't live in the past. They've got to kind of think about what they need to do now to bring the stability back to keep Swansea in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and that's their next decision has to be a major decision, because if it's not, they've got it completely wrong. They think.
Who would you have, Mike? Who would you bring in, Mike?
Chris Coleman. Because Chris Coleman's in a position now where he's done a brilliant job with the Wales national team. I think that somebody's run out of steam there, either the Welsh FA or maybe Chris, because of the enormous efforts in the last competition he was in, or maybe the players have just got a bit too old. I think it's the right time for him now to say, look, there's an opportunity to go to Swansea. It's my hometown. I love everything I've done for Wales. Nobody would blame him for moving on. And Chris Coleman's a winner. He would do the job.
He hasn't won anything, though, has he?
He's a winner in terms of he can make a team perform and get results, as proven in the last championships.
And also in the Euros, you mean?
That's what I said.
Yeah.
The championships.
The championships.
Well, the Euros were championships.
We call them the Euros, don't we?
Well, when the championships.
Yeah, well, we call them the Euros. Anyway, let me ask you this, Pete, because a lot of people say nowadays it's very difficult to motivate footballers. They get paid so much money, it doesn't really matter to many of them how they perform on the field. It doesn't really matter to them what they win because they've got so much money that they're buying cars that cost 200,000 quid, watches that cost 30,000, about 4 or 5 houses around the world. I mean, is that a problem for people like Bob Bradley to come into a football club where there are very many rich people?
Well, I would say most definitely, because that doesn't just happen in sport, it happens in business as well. A lot of people who work for a company always think, well, what's in it for me? But it takes a special type of manager, a special type of leader, which I believe someone like Klopp is, where he's kind of making it all about playing for the team. It's not about playing for yourself. And it does take a lot of work and a lot of effort to get everyone to buy into that, even to the players who aren't necessarily getting on the pitch every Saturday. But that's ultimately where you find a great team. And in fact, because I worked with Arsenal for a while, that was interesting, because one of the things that became quite evident there was that Wenger was very good at getting everyone to play for each other. But then when a player left, it seemed to radically affect the makeup of the team. But whereas Ferguson, I had the opportunity to talk to him on a number of occasions. One of the things that he said, this is when he retired, that he got everyone to play for him. Yeah. And once he realised that people didn't want to play for him anymore, it was like, well, you don't. It became very obvious that person didn't fit in the team, and that's why a lot of players moved on from United when perhaps they were at the peak of their ability.
Sure. How does it affect the Swansea as a club itself? Because two dramatic things have happened. Not only have they got a new board of directors, the club was bought, they're now going through managers like a dose of salts. It's a bad situation, isn't it? When the rattling train does not seem to have a driver either at the front or at the back.
Well, it affects everything. It doesn't just affect the team, it affects the fans, and that's why it would take someone like Chris Coleman to come in to kind of raise the vibration, raise the energy, and to give people hope, because the fans also make a huge difference, I believe, to the way that.
Well, they booed him. You see, that was the problem. I think that's why the board decided, and then had to go. He was getting a chorus of booing and disapproval from the people who are the currency of the club.
Well, they're paying customers as well. But also, Jim White was saying that when he spoke to him a few days ago, and he said to him he was understanding that in the club there were some problems with his training method. Some of the players weren't buying into it, didn't really like the idea of what he was making them do, and he didn't know that. He seemed to be completely oblivious to the fact that the players were not responding, which is not a great sign for a manager, is it?
No, not really. I mean, it's. I would imagine that years ago it was probably a bit easier to get people to comply and get them to behind you. But like you said, when money pollutes a lot of people, and when they have a lot of the things which most people aspire to in life, I just think a lot of players one day will look back and realise that they had a lot of money, but they never had that camaraderie which can be developed within a team, and gives that person a sense of pride of really being a part of something. Because everyone wants to be a part of something, whether you're a fan, whether you're a player. Deep down, we all want to feel like we made a difference, and you didn't do it on your own. You did it because you were a part of a team that wanted to do the best that it could every single time you played.
Sure, absolutely.
The bottom line, I guess, in the end, Pete, is that whoever takes over this job at Swansea has got a hell of a mountain to climb. And there's a pretty good chance, I would say, that they won't be anywhere near as good as Bob Bradley was.
Oh, rubbish.
Yeah.
Bob
what do you
Bradley
mean rubbish?
was useless. What are you on about? He won
two games. He drew 2 games. He lost 7. Yeah.
And you think that's okay?
And he dropped them from 17th down to 19th.
Yeah.
But if they'd let him stay on, I believe he would have got better.
What a load of
What about
drivel.
you, Pete?
I'm not sure. I might leave that one for you two.
No. Pete, you speak out and say he's had too much brandy on his Christmas pudding. I'm telling you, it's still affecting his thought pattern.
I don't eat Christmas pudding.
Yeah, well, whatever. You put brandy on things that... I've seen you drink a lot of brandy, put it that way. Yes. Anyway, Pete, listen, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Sorry about that, Pete.
Yeah. He's been struck dumb by.
Apologies for my rather overexcitable associate here.
Struck dumb by the sudden realisation of the idiocy of his comments.
Yes, indeed. How about this from James? How can a proper journalist like you let Parry rant about an accent causing someone to lose their job? If it was true, he'd be sacked. Absolutely shocking.
Can I just point out to everybody and our millions of listeners out there? Hang on, this is not about Bobcat Bob's accent. It's about the phrases, expressions and Americanisms he used to try and explain himself and describe what the job was that he was doing. Nothing to do with his accent.
Exactly.
Nobody gets that.
And all these wallies who are out there being holier than thou, talking about xenophobic, it's discriminatory. I mean, really, get a life.
Yeah,
this is Talk Sport.
The current debate that's going on in football in this country.
But I'll tell you what is relevant to the current debate. We will continue to talk about Bobcat Bob, and we'll hear from him as well, because he's on Jim White's show. But also later, we're going to be talking about Who Are You, Ian Holloway, whose record, by the way, is not much better. He's played 7 games, lost 6.
I know,
at least Bob Bradley won 2 games, drew 2. And lost 7. So we'll be getting to Ian Holloway a little bit later on. Let me read you a few tweets, though. Hi, lads, says Mark in Belfast. I say Louis Van Gaal for the Swansea job. I miss Porky doing his voice impersonation. And now no Bobcat Bob to enjoy. I mean, nobody accused you of being anti-Dutch when you used to do Louis Van Gaal, did you?
No.
By the way,
she's daffodil season.
So were you listening to Steve McLaren after the Derby win yesterday? Against Birmingham. He was on Talk Sport a little bit earlier on. He's changed his voice again. I would like to have a listen to that.
The strangest voice that was illustrated this morning, flicking through all the chants and all that, was Mark Clattenburg, who's out at some international conference where, once again, Ronaldo's been voted the greatest player in the world or something. You know?
Okay.
And he was speaking. First of all, I didn't realise he had such a strong Geordie accent, but it's very strong. But it's interspersed with, sort of enunciations of words in a sort of Middle Eastern type...
Middle Eastern?
Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
Well, I think he was trying to sort of, pay tribute to his host or something like that.
Because he was out in Qatar or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it was
a bit of a sort of Steve McLaren-ish type thing.
It was very much so, because on the report I saw, they compared it to Steve McLaren talking like, like you say in England, you say this, and Joey Barton, who did a sort of mixture of sort of Scouse, Tyneside and French.
What was he doing there?
No, he wasn't there. They used the example of Joey Barton when he went. Remember, he went on loan to France, to Lille. Was it Marseille?
It was Marseille, wasn't it?
Marseille, I think you're right. Joe Cobber to Lille, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he talked very slowly and enunciated his words. It gets you when you're abroad.
It does, yeah. Let's have a listen to what Steve McLaren said after the game yesterday.
Could have scored more. We needed that because you never know what might happen in the last 5 minutes. First half, we were patient, probably over patient, and I've got to say we upped it in the second half, and deserved the win.
He's definitely changed his voice.
No, I don't think that's different.
Yeah, he sounds more Yorkshire now.
No. Well, Steve McLaren is from North Yorkshire.
Yeah, but he's gone back to something similar to... It's very different from the last accent
I thought I haven't got any issue with that whatsoever. I think it's fine. No problem at all.
Well, let's have a listen to Bobcat Bob then, because he was on Jim White earlier. Yeah. And he was talking an awful lot of sense, actually, as he always does.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think he could have been a great manager for Swansea.
I think he's a good man.
Look, the media has different agendas. There are some very, very good pundits who understand the game, who write through experience, and then there's others that want headlines. And so I understand that when you come in from the outside, especially as an American with American owners, there are going to be people who are looking for ways to take shots. I don't think that affects who I am, and that doesn't affect my work. I never carried any of that in front of the team. I could care less.
He could care less. You see, that's another Americanism. We say, I couldn't care less, but in America they say, I could care less, which actually means complete opposite.
Of course it means the complete opposite. Yeah. I mean, the first time I was in America and somebody said to me, I'm... And they used the word that begins with P, SS in the middle and D at the end.
Right.
In this country, of course, it means intoxicated.
Past.
In America, no. It's an I. It's an I.
Begins with P, has had 2 S's in the middle and ends in D.
It's an I in the middle. But in America, it means I'm very, very fed up. And of course...
Angry.
Yeah, angry, that's right.
Well, I think he's actually used that word in an interview as well.
Is that right?
They're not happy about it. Now, how about this?
Well, because you didn't get a PK?
Yeah. taking shots. Larry says this, Mike, you're right. The name Parry is Welsh. It means son of Henry. Probably why Porky is such a hooray Henry groupie.
Yeah, that's a bit harsh.
Hell says, are the Swansea owners the Beverly Hillbillies? Dear God, Porky has slaughtered them.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
Neil says, Mike Parry accusing MG of having coq au vin instead of cognac. Are you sure you went to the King's School, Chester?
Yeah, certainly did, mate. Great school. Look, take the Glazer family who took over Manchester United.
Yes.
What did they do when they took it over? They decided that Sir Alex Ferguson is probably the most successful domestic manager in the world.
Yes.
So I think we'll stick with him.
Yes, well, that was sensible.
Of course it was.
And they also convinced him to stay on
Exactly.
because at one point he was going to leave, wasn't he?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I mean, they had to reassure him.
He was.
I didn't know that, but I mean, they had to reassure him that the amount of funds that he would get in comparison to other leading European clubs would be sufficient, and it hardly affected his track record of success.
No.
So they made exactly the right decision.
Yes.
They didn't suddenly come
they
in
also
and say,
had a very
I
good
think we'll have an American manager.
They also had a very good chief executive, didn't they, in Gill,
Yes,
who was basically Sir Alex Ferguson's kind of partner in crime.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
and they
is,
were able to keep them together. As soon as they both left, it all went to hell in a handcart.
Well, I totally agree with that. And what I'm saying is, the Swansea board, when they moved in, they I don't know what they've been doing because I don't pay a great deal of attention to what happens in the background at Swansea.
Well, it's all gone wrong since they got rid of Gary Monk, really, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, if you come in and you're American, you want to keep, actually, the artefacts that surround the club, which have given it success in the previous 6 seasons,
Indeed.
which they'd had.
Yes.
So you think you would keep a British manager, you think you'd certainly keep a British chief executive. I don't know if they got rid of the chief executive there or not.
Well, Hugh Jenkins is no longer sort of running the place in the same way. He was chairman,
yeah. That's right, yeah.
But so it's not really necessarily, I mean, the papers this morning say it's not really his decision
No.
as to who the next manager is going to be.
No, of course
because if
not,
it
no.
was, it might be Ryan Giggs. How about this from Pete, which is a bit unfortunately snide in your area, I would say.
Go on.
Swansea should hire Ronald Koeman. I'm sure he would relish the step up to take the job of the biggest club in Wales, rather than slumming it at the least important and most pointless club in Merseyside.
Yeah, but you see what that is? That's just a cop-out, some Liverpool fan, just having a little dig.
Yes.
Because he sees an opportunity within the situation. But the thing is, it's such a silly comparison and silly note. We don't take notice of things like that.
Indeed. Here's a text from someone who doesn't give a name. Bob's tactics were rubbish. I think there's probably some truth to that. But they were getting better, I think. I think he was, some of the performances the team put in were showing signs that they could have actually stayed up. And another one from someone who doesn't give a name. MG, how the hell do you not go crazy working with Porky? Listening to him warble on with his made-up interpretations of the English language is like pulling teeth.
But you see, that's only one person's opinion and one person's interpretation of it. I wouldn't worry about it. I would say that I believe in the will of the millions of people who listen to this show every day.
Is that right?
And I'll stick with them. Thank you.
Yeah. How's this one from Owen? He says, hi, Mike, you must tell Mr. P to hold off on the Barocca and coffee. Obviously don't mix well with the heart tablets.
They wouldn't, I'm sure. But as I don't indulge or overindulge in that sort of area, I've got nothing to worry about whatsoever, have I?
Okay. Jason says, Bobcat speaks far better English than Mike Parry's mangled pronunciations.
Talking about who are you?
Who are you?
Right, because we're going to move on to that.
I mean, he was a bit snitty yesterday, wasn't he?
Well, what I don't get is, I mean, look, for goodness sake, right, I was once subject to a baying mob inside a football stadium, and do you know what they were singing?
A baying mob?
A baying mob.
Well, that's no way to refer to Tottenham Hotspur fans.
Well, and do you know what they were singing? I'm going to actually illustrate to you exactly what they were singing, right?
All right.
That baying mob had it in for me, and they were singing this.
What were they singing?
They were singing... sacked in the morning.
Sacked in the morning.
Sacked in the morning. That's because they felt that my address to some Tottenham fans.
Was this when you were half hanging over the ledge of the?
I was communicating with.
Of the hospitality area.
I was
with his shirt undone.
I was communicating with Spurs fans.
You looked a hell of a mess that day.
I did not look a mess. They had tried to.
Did they have to take you home in a stretcher?
No. Absolutely not. They tried to taunt me that I was carrying too much excess weight around the midriff.
Yes.
And all I did was open my shirt to prove to them that I had the old normal six-pack combination.
But did you not hurl your leg over the balustrade in an illustration of another criticism that they were making of you?
That was a bit of a jest because somebody said, "Hey, Porky, when did you last get your leg over?"
Yeah, it's a family show. This.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I slung my leg over just to join in with the banter with the crowd.
Yeah.
But then I got a load of.
Did you not get asked to leave?
No, of course I didn't. I saw the whole game out. It was at Spurs.
What
Everton.
was the score?
Everton won 2-1.
Did they?
Yeah, and but I got a load of the old sacked in the morning.
Yeah.
You'll be sacked in the morning. And apparently, who are you?
Who are you?
Got a bit of that yesterday.
He did. He didn't like it.
Well, that's what you do when you're a manager. You have to take the outrageous slings and arrows of misfortune.
Yes, or the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Sling and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Exactly. Yeah, well, we'll find out some more about that a little bit later on because we'll have a listen. We played it a bit yesterday on the show.
Yeah.
We want to hear some more from Ian Holloway.
Good idea. Good idea.
Because his record is getting worse and worse and worse, and he may not be long in the job either. Yeah. This is Talk Sport.
Who are you?
Crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people living as hoes. Yeah, but maybe it's not too late.
Let's go across to Ali Pally, where Dan Dawson's watching the darts for us.
Defo.
Dan.
Yes, first game of the afternoon. Plenty of German fans here at Ali Pally trying to lift their man Max Hopp with the fabulously creative chant of hop, 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 hop. But it's not working right now because he's 2-0 down to the top player from Belgium, Kim Huybrechts. He is halfway to a place in the last 16 of the William Hill World Championship. Got 3 games this afternoon, 3 more this evening. The big name this afternoon, world number 6 James Wade. He takes on the bronzed Adonis Steve Beaton. And Peter Snakebite Wright this evening. He'll be the final second round game. He takes on the Welshman Jamie Lewis. But this evening we get to see the start of the 3rd round, and that includes the continuing defence of the title by Gary Anderson and an incredible clash between Adrian Lewis and Raymond van Barneveld, men who have 7 world titles between them. But right now Kim Huybrechts 2-0 up at a race to 4 on young Max Hopp. Dan Dawson, Alexandra Palace.
Dan, thanks very much indeed. Great name, isn't it? Max Hopp.
Well, Max Hopp is a fantastic name. Michael van Gerwen, that's a great name.
Yeah.
He wears that shirt, doesn't he, with MVG on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't he?
Well, because he's Michael van Gerwen.
Yeah, all right.
I've met him, you know. He's the guy who wanted to throw a dart at my head with an apple on
Oh,
it.
yes, but somehow health and safety ruled it out.
Absolutely, wouldn't let him do it. Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
I think we should reenact that. I've said that to you before.
Yeah, I don't mind
Maybe we'll
doing
do it with the axe, when we do the axe throw.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good idea, yeah.
Now, let's talk to Andrew Warshaw, because
Indeed.
you've been moaning for ages now about this new plan to make the World Cup expanded into 16 groups of 3 teams, 48-team World Cup. Gianni Infantino now says that basically everyone is overwhelmingly in favour of it. So it looks like it's going to happen. Let's find out from Andrew exactly when it might happen. Andrew, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. Mr. Parry, great to talk to you again after all this time.
Well, it's very, very good to talk to you.
It doesn't make
as
any
well,
more sense than he did
Andrew.
the last time you spoke to him, Andrew.
And delighted to have you on the show. Ups the quality a bit because, you know, the quality suffers when I have to work with Mike Graham every blinking day.
Well, I mean, having just got Bobcat Bob sacked from Swansea, he's now probably going to be trying to gun for Gianni Infantino. But Mr. Infantino seems very keen on this 48-team World Cup.
Yeah, there's no chance that he's going to go as well. In fact, probably you'll find that when he comes to the end of his term in 2019, he'll have another 4. You'll like that, Mr. Parry. But anyway, on to current matters. Yeah, well, basically, here's the situation. Gianni Infantino said during his presidential campaign that expanding the World Cup was one of his major platforms. It was a pretty strong vote winner. And on this occasion, not in the same way as happened with some of the other pledges he's made, but he does seem to have put his money where his mouth is. And it looks almost certain to have expanded to 48 teams, probably starting with the 2026 World Cup, which is almost certainly going to be in North and Central America because it's their turn.
Right.
Now, the crucial date for you guys and the listeners is January the 9th and 10th. In other words, in a couple of weeks from now, when the FIFA Council, this new look expanded FIFA Elite, will have a number of formats on the table and we'll pick one of them. And this one, a 48-team World Cup with initially 16 groups of 3, seems likely that will pass. So that seems to be where we are at the moment.
OK, now, Andrew, can I say the immediate response to that, the immediate impact of that decision will be that the competition will have to be played over more than one country, because no country in North or South America is going to be able to cope with a number of football stadiums of high quality, even if you build them years in advance.
America's got loads of stadiums.
America has, but if you're talking about Mexico or you're talking about any South American country, not enough.
Michael, let me respond to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You're absolutely right in one sense, and that sense is this: there are not many countries anywhere on the planet that can, on their own, stage this many matches, especially since the tournament is not going to be expanded in terms of time.
Exactly. 12 groups of 4. 12 groups of 4. You're going to need 24 stadiums.
16 groups of 3.
But there is a but, and Mr. Bovell is absolutely right in the sense that the United States, at least in 226, if, as seems likely, they share with either Mexico or Canada or both, will be able to accommodate this format. The question that then arises, what happens when the World Cup carries on, i.e. 2030 onwards?
Yes.
There aren't that many countries in that many continents who, on their own, can stage this kind of event. And that's going to be the nitty-gritty. That's why on January the 10th there's going to have to be some very, very careful examination as to which format is used.
Presumably they've thought of that as well, though, because
hang on,
it may well be...
Hang on, Bovell. It's my turn to...
Bovell?
Sorry.
Bovell?
Bovell.
What do you call me Bovell
Well,
for?
Andrew just called you Mike Bovell.
Sorry, what am I saying?
Did you call me Mike Bovell? Andrew, is that right?
Andrew, it's honestly...
Sorry, I was dozing off there in the middle of your soliloquy, so I didn't notice what you called me.
Don't worry, he's quite inconsequential.
Here's the point, Andrew. Surely the point is, Andrew, they will have thought of all this, so they must be working towards an end game where perhaps they only want to hold the World Cup in, say, 3 or 4 places.
Well, yes, but don't forget, the World Cup is now back on a rotational basis, which means that continent after continent will stage it, and it's going to. I mean, can you imagine? Obviously, it's not going to happen in Qatar because Qatar is going to stay with 32 teams. But can you imagine, for instance, having a 48-team World Cup in a country like
ridiculous.
Qatar?
I know what the end game is, Andrew, because I'm also a student of world politics.
What the end game is. What's your end game?
My end game is that this is eventually going to end up in China in 2030 because they're going to be the biggest and most powerful and richest country in the world, and in 2034 it's going to end up in India, which is also going to be a major power by the time this comes round.
Okay,
that is the end game.
Mike, that's not possible, and I'll tell you why. You cannot have the World Cup in the same continent 2 World Cups running. By
then, I bet you can.
The second point is that because it's rotational, although you're quite right, everyone knows it's going to end up in China eventually.
Exactly.
But may not be that early. This is a chance. Those who are in favour, and let me say straight away to the listeners that UEFA are by no means in favour at this point. They have not endorsed this idea, and that will be one of the very interesting things that will happen when all these confederations sit round the table in a couple of weeks' time. The fact is, giving 16 more countries a chance to play on world football's biggest stage it is a very clever ploy by Infantino if he decides to go for a second term, which seems highly likely to happen in 2019, but it's not without flaws. We've already discussed 1 or 2 of them. What happens if you get to a situation where the results of final group games can be manipulated to suit both teams? But so I think it's got pluses, it's got minuses, but there's a lot more discussion and examination to come.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
No, please do, Mr. Bovell.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry about this, Andrew.
I'm never going to live this down.
You never are, no. Luckily, I didn't hear it, otherwise I'd be coming round to have a word. But here's the thing. The European Club Association, right, doesn't really have as much sway, surely, as all of the other teams who are in favour of the expansion so that they can then play in the finals.
Well, that's a good point.
Thank you.
But don't forget that, yes, you're quite right. The clubs don't dictate this. The national associations do. But let's not beat around the bush. Most of the players who play at the World Cup, a majority, play for European clubs, and the compensation situation has been battered around for some time, as has the amount of rest that players need between seasons, and those are the two of the points that the European Clubs Association, which represents the biggest teams on the continent, is opposed to. I mean, the European teams provide. Let me just remind the listeners: 80% of the players to a World Cup are provided by European teams, so they are a significant stakeholder, and that will place pressure on UEFA in a couple of weeks to make absolutely sure that this is going to suit their needs.
Absolutely. Now, Andrew, I had another brilliant idea while we've been talking about this.
That's good, because the last one was wrong.
Excuse me. And that is, couldn't you, the year before the World Cup in 2026, couldn't you have a minor competition of 16 of
no, they already have the Confederations Cup.
No, 16 of the poorer teams in a knockout for them to boil themselves down to 4 to join in the proper World Cup tournament the following year.
Well, that's called the qualifiers, isn't it?
So how many finalists would you want, Mike?
I would want essentially no more than 32 under any circumstance at all.
When it was expanded in 1998 from 24,
to 32.
were you in favour of that?
No, I was not.
Right.
Because I tell you what, Andrew, I think you and I have had this conversation before. The best international competition ever has always been the European Championships with 16 teams, because there were 16 quality teams and every game was absolutely first class.
Yeah, but Mike, I hear you, and you make. There's a lot of what you say that I think the listeners would agree with. But
exactly.
That to the Welsh in terms of what happened at Euros. I mean,
yes.
If it had still been 16 teams, they almost certainly wouldn't have qualified. And look what happened to them.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
But you will end up in a proper World Cup tournament with one of those ludicrous scores that we now get in the Antipodean qualifiers, 23-1. New Zealand 23, Samoa 1.
Yeah,
and New Zealand are not even a very good team.
The standard between New Zealand and, strange as it may seem, and one of its continents, less, shall we say, developed countries, is a lot greater than having, say, I don't know, Italy against Iraq in the final in the World Cup, where you might get a 1 or 2 goal margin. So, I'm not sure about that. I think the concept of what you're saying is sound.
Absolutely sound. I agree.
Yes, it could be diluted, but on the other hand, there is a strong argument to suggest, and it's supported by a majority of confederations, that giving another 16 teams a chance to play on the biggest stage of all cannot be a bad thing. We wait and see.
Absolute balderdash.
I think that's true, Andrew. I'm looking forward to it, actually. But thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us, even though you got my name wrong. Andrew Warshaw there, giving us the lowdown on Mr. Infantino's plan, dastardly plan, as Mr. Parry thinks, to expand the World Cup to 48.
As far as Mike Bovell, I'd be with my lawyers by now.
Would you? Well, he spends a lot of time with lawyers, doesn't he?
No.
Hey?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know?
Why would
I not have said that?
Well, I know.
No, never mind. Don't take any notice of that. This is Talk Sport. Good afternoon, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to Two Mikes on Talk Sport. We're going to talk more managers in peril coming up in this hour, because who are you? Ian Holloway is on the cusp of doing something not very good at QPR. Tony Incenzo is going to tell us what he thinks of the manager and whether he's going to be hanging around. He's lost 6 games, he's only won 1. Also, of course, we're going to be talking to Kevin O'Sullivan, who's a TV critic. He's telling us all about the Christmas TV, whether it was any good, whether the New Year's going to be any better. And, of course, it's Ask Porky as well. So if you've never had a problem solved live on the air, now is the time to do it. You can tweet us at the Two Mikes or send in your questions on our Facebook page. 08717 223344. You're listening to the Two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mikes. There'll be Porky Vision, of course, coming up tomorrow. And then on Friday, we'll have the Porky quiz on your knowledge of 2016.
Yes.
And precisely what has been happening. Last year, apparently, I don't remember this, but you got 0 out of 10 on the news quiz for 2015. So now I've got a few people who have been interested in that video of you at White Hart Lane.
Oh, yes.
Perry says this. I just watched that video of Porky at Spurs. A steward came up and had a word with him.
Yes.
#plank.
Oh, but it wasn't thrown out.
No.
I mean, it was literally banter between me and the Spurs fans, and the steward who came up congratulated me on raising the merriment level, and yes, I sat down. All was well. There was no problem at all.
Okay.
No problem at all.
Dave says, tell Mike Parry Everton lost 2-0 to Spurs that day. He either got thrown out or was too blooderated to remember.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And the blurry black cat says, MG, Porky six-pack, what of Roundtree's jelly?
Oh, yeah, that's very nice, isn't it?
Oh, look, here it is.
Sacked in the morning! We're getting sacked in the morning! Sacked in the morning!
Oh, you say it was a bit of banter between the Spurs fans. And by the way, I didn't get sacked.
No,
well, not then.
Not that time, no. Here's one from Paul. He says, I'm enjoying an afternoon of radio with the Two Mikes, Bovell and Parry.
It's great.
That's horrendous, isn't it? And somebody else has sent a picture in of you enjoying yourself out to West Ham. Somebody called David Coates. He says, me and my pals with Porky at White Hart Lane.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, he was in good form last season.
Yes. Last season.
You remember that?
Let me see. Well, I mean, that's a perfectly respectable picture, isn't it?
Looks like they've shut the bar behind you.
No,
the grate's been pulled down.
I'd like you to retweet that,
They've obviously closed the bar.
Because I look completely normal and acceptable there.
I wouldn't say that
at all.
I wouldn't say that.
Now,
and Stephen says, "Old Mike Boville, who are you?"
Who are you? Now then, talking about completely acceptable and normal behaviour, I see that Watford's mascot, Harry the Hornet, has been cleared.
Yes, he has indeed.
Yes.
As I said he should be, because you yesterday were giving him a hard time, saying that you agreed with Sam Allardyce that it was disgraceful behaviour for him to pretend to be a diver when Wilfred Zaha was going off the field.
I think, to be honest, I think that the mascot sort of exceeded his authority as representative of the club, you know what I mean? Because I think it's a bit hard. However, you've got to get into the spirit of things. And
well, he's a mascot. I mean, who's going to take him seriously? And quite frankly, what if they had a hearing up at Wembley or up at St George's Park or wherever they're going to have them these days?
Mascot,
for the mascot, does he have to turn up in his outfit?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. But anyway, look, what was quite interesting is that so I see this morning, the Rogues Gallery of mascots through all the clubs, and it's very interesting. They have a mascot race, don't they, once a year? And they'll run around. And,
what's the Everton mascot?
Well, you see, this is quite interesting because the Everton mascot is Changi. The elephant takes his name from Everton sponsors.
Right, the beer,
beer,
right.
Which is great. But that's only for the last few years. I mean, actually,
so what's actually a guy dressed as an elephant?
Yes, it is, with an elephant's head on. Yeah, it is, yeah. But
that sounds a bit bizarre.
Well, they're all bizarre. Hull City have Rory the Tiger.
Oh, that's because they're the Hull City Tigers.
Yes, that's right. Bournemouth have Cherry Bear. Arsenal have Gunnosaurus Rex, the dinosaur.
Yes.
Southampton have Sammy the Saint and all that kind of stuff, and that's what all
about.
about.
Man United have a Red Devil.
Well, I was going to tell you about that, actually. But just before that, I was going to say, Everton's mascot, as far as I'm concerned, has always been the toffee lady, because Everton Mints
The toffee lady?
Well, they're known as the Toffees, aren't we? Because Everton Mints are... You know that Everton are known as the Toffees,
I know they're known as the Toffees, yeah.
Thank you.
But I didn't know why, though.
Well, because the Everton Mints are produced on the site next to Goodison Park for, decades.
Are they still made there, then?
They're not still made there, but they're still made and you're still getting at the ground.
Right.
And the toffee lady used to walk around the perimeter of the ground in a beautiful sort of 18th century sort of bonnet and dress and all that.
Yeah.
And she threw them into the crowd to the kids, And that's been going on for like 100 years.
And they still do that.
Do you know what? I can't remember when I last saw her doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know because
maybe
sometimes
Chang beer have blocked it.
Sometimes I don't get up to my seat until like 5 to 3 or something like that, 5 minutes before the game, and I might have missed her or something like that, you know what I mean?
But are they mints or toffees, though?
Well, they're both. They're like humbugs, if you see what I mean.
They're striped?
Striped and...
but they're mints, essentially.
And glazed on the outside, but soft on the inside. Yeah, yeah.
What, so toffee on the inside?
Yeah, well, that's toffee-ish, you know what I mean?
Well, why are they called the toffees?
Because they're made in a toffee factory.
Toffee, yeah, but they're mints, though.
No, they're like humbugs.
No.
They're like that. But anyway, that's irrelevant. Now,
is it?
You just asked me about Manchester United,
yeah.
right?
Do they have a red devil with a pitchfork?
No, you see, this is interesting. Manchester United, they say that the mascot there is Fred the Red, a devil born in 1994. He dances in front of the crowd before matches. Well, that's not the same guy that was there when me and Alvin Martin were taking that penalty competition at Old Trafford.
Yeah, well, what year was that?
At half-time. I'm trying to remember, because I've got a...
Must have been after 94, surely.
It was way after 94. I've got a silver shield at home.
Have you?
Because I was the winner. And I got a... And the silver shield
this is why you're telling me a story about mascots?
No.
Because so we can get down to another story about you?
No, the silver shield they gave me is a smaller version of, like, the Wimbledon woman's shield.
A smaller version?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Well, how much smaller? Like a saucer?
Do you have to be so dismissive? Do you have to be?
I mean, I don't think it's anything like the Wimbledon.
You've never won anything in your life.
I've won loads of things. I've got loads and loads of trophies, right?
You dismiss
from playing golf. I used to win trophies at golf all the time.
You dismiss my boxing trophy. You're now dismissing my penalty.
Well, the boxing trophy that you tweeted out the other day, right? As someone pointed out, it looks very, very new, considering that it's supposed to have been given to you in the 60s.
My housekeeper is busy at all times.
And also, who is called Mike at the age of 6?
What?
Mike. It says
I've
Mike
been called
Parry.
Mike all my life.
You've never been called...
Anyway,
no, you were not called Mike as a child.
Let me tell you about Fred the Red. Fred the Red. Now, when we were at Old Trafford that day, we had to get...
you and Alvin?
Yeah, me and Alvin, yeah. I had to get changed in the mascots changing room.
They wouldn't let you into the locker room?
No, let me into the locker room. No.
Did they have lockers?
I don't know, because I never got in there, because it was locked.
What about the mascots changing room?
Oh, the mascots changing room? No, they had cupboards. They had cupboards, right. Now,
what's the difference?
Well, this is the interesting thing, you see. These guys take it so seriously. Right. So what happens is, before the game, Fred the Red comes in, but he didn't have a devil's head. And in fact, this is an interesting thing. He had like a bear's head, but he comes in.
Bear's head?
No, honestly, he comes in and he says, "Oh, hi guys, great to meet you."
Are you sure that was the right mascot?
Well, I'm just about to tell you the story.
Oh, right.
So he says, "Great to see you guys. How are you? Great to see you. I love Talk Sport." No, I said, "That's great." He says, "No, wonder if you could help me today because I always take advice on this." "Yeah, okay, mate. What is it?" So he says, "Well, I need advice on which head to put on today."
Which head?
Which head? so he opens 3 cupboards. He's got 3 different heads.
Right.
And he's no, I'm not joking. And he says, "No." He says, so he puts the first one on.
Yeah.
He says, "No, this is not bad." He said, "But I think it restricts my neck moving a bit, you know."
And what was that one?
Well, it was like a bear head, you know.
Bear's head,
yeah.
Okay.
And he said, "And I'm not sure if my voice does my voice come out properly out of this head, you know?"
Right.
I said, "Yeah, it looks all right." "All right." So he takes it off and he puts the second one on.
Right.
He says, "Now, the reason I'm a bit off with this one is I never wear this on wet days. It retains too much water."
And what was that head?
It gets too heavy. Well, that was like a different head, you know.
Was it a bear or was it a devil? What? Hippo?
No, it was that the second one, as I recall, was more like a sort of a Martian's head. I don't know why, but no, it was like pointed, you know.
A pointy head?
Yeah.
Right, cone
weird,
head.
Very weird.
Right.
Anyway, so I said to him, "I don't think that's the one for today," you know. So he put his third head on.
And what was that?
Well, this was, I think, the red devil head, you know.
Right, so with horns?
Well, it didn't. I don't remember having horns.
You don't seem to remember this very well.
Well,
this story.
it was a long time ago, and
was a drink taken?
I thought it. No,
Are you sure this actually happened?
It happened. I thought it was so ludicrous that here I am at Old Trafford, you know, one of the great theatre of dreams football stadium in the world, and all I'm doing is being fashion advisor to the mascot on his head.
Right.
And in the end, he settled on one head and he ran out. But they take themselves very, very seriously.
I'm sure they do.
Believe me, they really do.
Yeah.
And they get their own dressing room and all that. So
He must probably not too happy that you were in his dressing room.
well, he probably wasn't. It wasn't a big dressing room, I have to say. But nevertheless, I do think they bring an ambience to a football match, which I would not like to see got rid of. You
I
know
wonder
what I
if
mean?
they've all got 3 heads.
Sorry?
What if they've all got
Well,
3
maybe
heads?
they have. Maybe they all have. I don't know. Maybe they've all got more than
Marcus,
one head.
the Evertonian, says this. The Everton toffee lady is no longer allowed to walk around the pitch throwing mints out due to health and safety reasons.
Is that
it's
right?
pathetic.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So, see, he calls them mints as well.
Yeah, but they are Everton mints. But
so why are they called the mints then?
because they're made in a toffee factory. To keep trying to tell you.
Well,
That's
what's
why
a
we're known
toffee
as the
factory?
Toffees. A toffee factory is a factory that makes sweetmeats.
Sweetmeats?
Yes, for...
Sure. Sweetmeats something else, aren't they?
No. Sweetmeats are those...
Sweetmeats are the cojones, aren't
No,
they?
not at all.
That's
Not at
sweet
all.
breads.
Not at all. Exactly. And you know, the production on Merseyside has been there for hundreds of years, and that's why I've called the Toffees. The Everton mints are the most famous brand of those particular toffees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to talk to Tony and Chenzo coming up next about Who Are You, Ian Holloway. Got a great one here from Adrian.
Who are you?
He says, Who are you? Went to school with my ex. His nickname was Onion because he was always crying and whinging. This is Talk Sport.
Well, he did a bit of that yesterday, I have to say.
People think I'm going to get sacked in the morning. Well, that's nice, isn't it? Yeah, I hope you enjoy your Christmas and your New Year. Why don't you just sing something better and something different, you know? I've always been very respectful here. I didn't mean to beat you in the playoffs. Wasn't my fault, was it? So why don't you just show a bit of respect? But that's life these days, that's football these days, and it's all supposed to be instant, isn't it? It's about getting better. And because football is turned into this instant coffee, which is a load of baloney, I'm going to keep going because I know what I'm doing. I've done it before, and hopefully I'll be given that trust to build a club and build a team and build a spirit.
That's Ian, Who Are You, Onion, Holloway.
Yeah,
I said this yesterday.
Moaning tirade that was.
But also, I said this yesterday, why is he mixing up instant coffee and baloney?
I don't know.
You know. Where's he getting all that from?
But not only that, I mean, going on, oh, that's nice, isn't it? You know, singing, you
Merry
get
Christmas.
sacked in the morning, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. But then...
I mean, how many managers have had that sung at them? Probably thousands, right?
I was about to say, but then completely turns around and says, why don't they sing something else, or show respect?
Yeah.
But then goes into...
Show me some respect!
Yeah, but then goes into, well, I suppose that's it these days, isn't it? What you get? Well, if you conclude that that's it these days, Ian, just don't moan about it, man. Just get on with it. It's water off a duck's back,
or
isn't
stay
it?
out of football.
Yeah,
I mean, football is a pretty brutal
Yeah.
sport. I mean, I said this on one of my many responses on Twitter this morning to all these wallies who were complaining about us being xenophobic and attacking Bob Bradley because he was American because we could, when we wouldn't attack somebody from perhaps another ethnic background because we'd be too frightened to do it.
Yeah.
Fact is, he happened to be American. It wasn't about, as you've said, the fact that he was American. It was about the phrases and the words
and
that he
expressions he used
to discuss football.
That's right, to try and get his point over,
Yeah.
which nobody could quite understand.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Now, he lost 7 out of 11 games that he was in charge of. Ian Holloway has lost 6 out of the 7 games that he's been in charge of.
Which is a worse percentage.
Which is actually a much worse percentage. Let's talk to Tony Vincenzo, because if it carries on like this, surely QPR are not going to keep him around. Tony, very good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, chaps. Great show as always. And a very, very, very disappointing time to be a QPR supporter. Ian Holloway took charge about 6 weeks ago. He started off with a 2-1 home win against Norwich. But since then, 6 straight defeats. They haven't scored for 4 games. And it's the club's worst run for 21 years.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's shocking,
and it can't really continue like this, can it? I mean, it doesn't look as... I mean, yesterday's game against Brighton, I mean, QPR were all over the place. They had a man sent off. I mean, at one point it looked like it could have been a sort of cricket score, and they didn't seem to be offering much by way of resistance at all defensively.
Well, I think the key issue is going to be the January transfer window. I mean, it's not really been reported, but in the last 12 months, I'm privy to private information on this, but I can tell you that the wage bill at QPR has been more than halved. I mean, in the summer, a lot of the big earners left: Rob Green, Leroy Furr, Matt Phillips, Junior Hoylett. They brought in 7 players, some from abroad. A couple of them can't speak English. None of the new signings, 7 new signings, none of them have really come in, hit the ground running. None of them have really established themselves in the team. People like Mbakota, Silla, Lynch, Bidwell, Borishuk, Shoek and Cousins, they've all looked good in little patches, but none of them have really grabbed the shirt and held the place down. And I think that's one of the key issues.
Do you know what I think, Tony? I think that Ian Holloway in recent years has become better known for his funny quips and his one-liners and his, his
Give him the job.
His West Country burr and his, his down-to-earth attitude and all that than he has for being a football manager. And I think we've all been sort of seduced by that. I mean, the thing I most remember him for in the last couple of years is doing a Sky TV 10 in 10 thing. Do you remember? There were 10 consecutive championship games and 10 days. He got on a coach, he drove around the country and he did co-commentary on some of them and I thought that's it. I thought he'd given up.
He was in
football
TalkSport
management
a few times as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in TalkSport a few times, came here, did a reasonable job, but I don't know why, this is the question I'm really asking you, Tony, I don't know why QPR thought he was still qualified as a manager at the very highest level that you can get, trying to get into the Premier League in this country, and that he had the skills still to do it.
Well, I think QPR is a very special case because it's such a family club that the fans associate with past QPR players and managers. Holloway had been in charge before from 2001 to 2006. It didn't start off very well for him that time. The club were relegated. He took on the job sort of around about February time. The club were relegated down to the 3rd tier. He was given time, though. 3 years later, they were promoted, having lost in the playoff final the year before, but they were promoted in 2004. And the fans loved that day. It was a promotion-winning day at Hillsborough. 7,000 fans travelled up there. And it was really good. And he played for the club, of course, in the 90s, from 91 to 96 in the Premier League. So that's why, really, he's got the job. It was his links with the club and also Mark Bircham coming in as assistant manager. The fans love
have they
those
still
guys.
got like a cast of thousands? Because Les Ferdinand's still there. I mean, in the coaching side, because at one point they had about 4 guys, didn't they?
Yeah, and as I'm saying, it's such a family club.
But are they all still there, though?
Yeah, Les Ferdinand's still there. Chris Ramsey, one of the previous managers, is now on the coaching staff and so on. And certainly they need to improve. And as I said, this transfer window, they need to get a couple of strikers in because the strikers at the moment, there are only 3 strikers at the club. Poulter's only scored 4 league goals. Washington's only scored 2 league goals. And Silla's only scored 4 league goals. Now, to make an impact, and everybody was hoping for the playoffs this year, you need somebody up front who's going to score at least 15 goals. If you want to challenge for the top 2, someone's got to score 20. And Rangers have never replaced Charlie Austin, who left a year ago to sign for Southampton. They've never replaced him.
They've actually scored fewer goals than anybody else in the division, apart from Wigan. They've only scored 20 goals so far this season. But the question is really, Tony, how long will they give Ian Holloway this time? I mean, if he doesn't win, say, for example, a game over this in the next 3 or 4 games, and he's then losing, he's then lost 10 games and only won 1. Surely they have to think about getting rid of him, don't they?
Well, the fans have sort of been voicing concerns on social media and on all the websites over the last 24 hours, and a lot of the fans who were heralding Ian Holloway's appointment 6 weeks ago have now changed their mind about it. The last home game against Aston Villa, I've been to every QPR home game for 43 years. It was the first time I've ever seen the team not have a shot on target in 90 minutes. They lost 1-0. And the lack of goals is the big disappointment, although the defending at Brighton wasn't very good. They were down to 10 men at the end, but the game was lost by then. A severely harsh red card for Neda Manua. But things have got to change. They've got to get some strikers in and start scoring some goals.
Well, you've seen every game since
every home game
43 years ago. Yeah. Every home game. At some point, you're going to have to stop that, aren't you?
Well, I'm employed by TalkSport to cover those home games.
Of course you are.
Imagine the money you've made.
To go there. Did you go back to Dave Sexton?
Yeah, I started in 73, and Gordon Jago was the manager. And then the great mid-70s period under Dave Sexton, where Rangers just missed out on winning the...
That's right, came second.
Stan Bowles and all that.
Yeah, the league title. Stan Bowles, Jerry Francis, Dave Thomas, Don Gibbons, great team. Yeah. And those players are still legends at the club. And that's why it's so hard when you grew up, when QPR were the best team in London, year after year, top London club. When you see them struggling now, it's very, very difficult. But sometimes in football, as a supporter, you've got to see those bad times to appreciate the good times when they come again.
But Tony, you will more than anybody appreciate that these days bad form on the pitch is disastrous for investment in the club. And your club is talking about, the possibility of a new ground and raising finance for it and all that. And I'm afraid the way things are going, with Ian Holloway in charge, you're sending out all the wrong messages.
Well, they certainly need to stabilise in the Championship this year and get back to the Premier League, because, as you said, they're talking about a 40,000 all-seater stadium just a mile and a quarter from Loftus Road in a place called Old Oak Common. Yeah. And that would be magnificent for the club, because they've been up to the Premier League a couple of times in the last 5 years and haven't lasted there. And one of the problems is that Loftus Road is lovely, but it only holds 18,000. And in modern football, you need 25 to 30,000 capacity to compete and survive in the Premier League. And they just can't do it. They also have a rented training ground which they share with college students, which hasn't been developed at all since Chelsea were there sort of 20 years ago at Imperial College. And they need a new training ground, they need a new stadium. The owners are very, very rich and they can see where the problems lie, and they're very ambitious, but it would be an absolute disaster if this current form continues and they slip into the relegation zone.
Just in one word, Tony, so you want Ian Holloway to stay around, is that what you're saying?
Well, just give him time. Let's see what he does in the transfer window, and let's see if things pick up.
OK. Tony Cenzo, 43 years, getting to see every single QPR home game. That's quite a record, isn't it? Absolutely remarkable. How about this one from Bill? He says, listen to Porky is rather akin to having your brain removed, popped into an industrial tumble dryer and popped back.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody needs a rinse of information in their bonds occasionally, and I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Not at all. Yeah. This is Talk Sport.
Piece of a particular show was we were talking about America and the great suburbs and the great...
Why would we be talking about Utah, though?
Well, because, as I said, there is nothing there except a bit of a mountain range and Salt Lake City and the Tabernacle.
Bit of a mountain range? What, you mean the Rockies?
Yeah, well, it runs through...
it runs towards the Rockies.
Runs through parts of Utah.
Porky would love 3 heads, says Wrong Star. Unfortunately, stuck with the 1.
What? That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
And quite a lot on the Everton Mint front. Dan says, an Everton Mint is definitely not a toffee. A toffee has butter in it, like a Werther's Original. However, one from Stephen Tring, he says, Mike Parry should know people in the Northwest call all sweets toffees.
Well, no, they don't. I mean, you don't call a Mint Imperial a toffee. You don't call a...
So he's wrong, then?
Yeah, he is wrong, because, sweets or candy, as Bob
Candy.
Bob, give me a bag of candy.
Taking candy from a baby.
Taking candy from a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, a pear drop's not a toffee, is it?
Now, how about this from Anthony? We are called the Toffees because Goodison Park was near Old Mother Noblet's toffee shop, where Everton mints were made and sold.
That's what I said. I said it was right next door.
Well, it's not a factory
it's not there anymore. Sorry?
It's a shop.
Well, she used to make them in the back, in the oven.
Well, it's hardly a factory then, is it?
Well, it was a production centre for toffees. What sort of definition do you want of it?
Well, it's a toffee shop.
You idiot.
It's a toffee
shop. What's
a
fish and chip shop?
It's a fish and chip shop.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
don't call it a factory, do you?
No, but that's where they make the fish and chips,
factory.
isn't it? No.
Yeah, but it's not a factory.
It doesn't matter. That's where they make the fish and chips, you idiot. They fry the chips and they fry the fish as well.
I don't know why you get so worked up. You should be careful.
I just get worked up. I just get irritated.
Why have you asked for a cardiologist to come on the show, by the way?
I haven't asked for a cardiologist.
Yes, you have.
What I've said is that I feel it's a tragedy that we've read over the last 72 hours.
Yes.
2 people who are very prominent in the public, in the world, and that's Carrie Fisher. And then, of course, George Michael have both died of, we believe...
Well, we're not sure about George Michael.
No, exactly. I was going to say, we believe, sudden heart conditions or heart conditions which have been around for a long time, which have suddenly kicked in, you know, and so it'd be very interesting to talk to.
So you want to talk to a cardiologist about it?
Well, I do, yeah, because I want to know, you know, I mean, I have a heart condition myself.
Well, you want to know if you're going to be next? Is that
No, I don't want to know. I don't want.
That's a shocking sort of
No. What I'm saying is that we all take good health for granted, but we never know. We never know how, you know, how it could affect each and every one of us, and maybe we could help millions of our listeners today to be aware of the signs by talking to an expert, a cardiologist. That's what I'm interested in.
Okay. Well, will you be revealing to him whether you were reasonably sort of careful about your intake of food and drink yesterday?
Very careful.
Your secret lunch that you didn't invite me to?
Yes.
How did it go?
It went very well, thank you. I had 2 glasses of Pinot Grigio.
Well, that was it.
That was it.
You expect me to believe that?
That was it. That was it.
You had 2 glasses of Pinot Grigio?
Yes.
So if I got hold of one of your sisters...
Yes.
And asked them, would they say that as well?
Indeed, they would.
How about Sue Ellen? How many did she have?
She had 2 bottles. But it wasn't Pinot Grigio.
No, of course not.
No.
Well, what about the house champagne? Was that any good? Or was it of a sort of a suspect
variety?
Was
pretty good. That was pretty
good.
What
mark was it?
I didn't examine it, actually.
Didn't you?
I don't, you know. You just sort
well,
of
you
get
should.
on with it.
No, you should always examine it.
Because
they might be palming off some Prosecco on you.
No, they weren't doing that. But they'd started by the time I got there. What I said is, you know, I opened a tab and said, when my family arrived, just let them, you know, whatever they want, and I'll be along later. And that was exactly what it was.
Okay.
So, no, it was very pleasant.
Talking to George Michael, actually, a lot of people were on Twitter yesterday saying you never got around to telling your George Michael story, and they asked if I would be able to do it today.
Who?
Me.
Oh, yes, please.
Not you.
No. I was going to say, I haven't got a George Michael story.
Yeah. Well, I was sent to Los Angeles.
Right.
This was back in the 80s when Wham was still around.
Yes.
To basically follow George Michael around.
Oh, what?
Because Wham were a very, very successful band.
Huge band, yeah.
And they'd been over, they were coming over to collect some MTV award, right? And the last time they'd been there, it turned out that a photographer had been sort of manhandled by one of their security people.
Guards, yeah.
So he was suing them.
Yes.
So what they did rather cleverly was they set up this, this is the kind of thing that you know, Sunday newspapers and those used to do.
Yes.
They set up a process server, as they call them over in America, the guys that hand you the subpoena.
Well, tap you on the shoulder with it.
Tap you on the shoulder and physically put it into your hand.
That's right.
So they set this guy up to meet them as they were coming off the plane at the airport, LAX.
And did you know that was going to happen?
Yeah.
And you were part of the plot?
Oh, well, it had already been arranged
That's
before I got involved in that, right?
So you were part of this entrapment procedure?
Well, it wasn't entrapment. He was being served by this guy because he was being subpoenaed to appear in court over the alleged sort of, you know, harassment and beating up of a photographer who had taken some pictures of him last time they were there.
Right.
Anyway, we then so George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley walk off the plane. This guy hands the thing. We got a picture of this happening, right, which would turn out to be the front page picture that week.
Right.
They then checked into a place called the Bellarge Hotel, and which is a beautiful hotel in West Hollywood. It's all a place where Danny DeVito used to have breakfast. One day I came down to have breakfast, and he was there. So we were booked into this hotel. And it was so lavish that the room was bigger than my apartment in New York.
Yeah.
It was absolutely incredible. And I was working with a guy called Phil Ramey, who was
I remember Phil.
Bit of a nutcase. I think he's still around. A paparazzi guy. He used to just crash into people if he wanted to get a picture of them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember.
In fact, he'd done it with Boy George. He said they got fed up with it. They were chasing me all around town. He said in the end they stopped at some traffic lights. I just rammed into the back of them.
That's right. Yeah.
They jumped out and he got a load of pictures.
That's right.
And that was how he used to work. Anyway, I went up to George Michael in the lobby of this hotel and said, "Oh, hi George. I'm from the News of the World," which is who I was working for at the time. Love to do a little interview with you, and you know, then sort of leave you alone. And he said, he basically said, "F off." I'm not talking to you.
That's not very nice, is it?
Which wasn't very nice because I was being very polite to him.
But you were hassling him, and you'd already been part of the plot.
No, he didn't see me. He hadn't seen me at the airport.
No, he hadn't seen you, but you were still part of the plot.
Well, he didn't know that.
That's pretty despicable
He
behaviour.
didn't know that. He didn't know.
It doesn't matter whether you were or not. You were part of the plot.
Doesn't matter.
To nobble George Michael,
Incorrect.
weren't you?
No,
yes,
no,
you were.
not at all. We just wanted to get an interview with him, right? And he refused to give us an interview. I said, "Well, the trouble is, we're now going to have to follow you around everywhere."
Yeah.
And he went, "Well, you know, good luck with that." You know, and then he tried to get us thrown out of the hotel.
Yeah, good idea.
The following day,
scum like you, I
was standing in the lobby, and this rather sort of pajinked manager type came up to me and said, "Oh, excuse me, Mr. Graham, I'm afraid we're going to have to ask you to leave the hotel." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, we've had some complaints about you harassing guests." And I said, "I haven't harassed anybody. Who have I harassed?" He says, "Well, George Michael's manager has been on and said that he should be removed from the hotel."
Yeah.
And I said,
"That's
well,
really good thinking."
Yeah, I said, "Do you know who I work for?" He said, "No, sir." I said, "I work for Rupert Murdoch." And he went, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, do you really want to have Rupert Murdoch's organisation banned from this hotel? Or would you rather ban George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley?" He said, "Yes, I see what you mean." So he let me stay. Because he was worried that, you know, suddenly Fox were going to boycott the place. Anyway, so we then, every day, they got a different car. I had a little sports car.
Right.
And every day they got a different car. They started off in a stretch limo.
Yeah.
And they ended up, by the end of the week, in a Mustang.
Right.
Because they kept just trying to escape from us.
I see.
But everywhere they went, we followed them.
Right.
And every restaurant they went to, we sent them a bottle of champagne. They sent it back. It was just this kind of rather ridiculous...
And did he ever give in and say, all
No.
right, 10 minutes?
He never did.
No?
He never did.
Okay.
We never got the interview. But
No.
we got the splash, which was on him being process served with the thing. So
well,
that was
it's
the story.
funny you should say that because do you remember in New York we used to use a photographer who was basically a builder?
A builder?
No, he worked on a building site. Do you remember him?
No.
He was a young lad who was trying to make his way, and he was a construction worker.
Oh, yeah.
And he used to do a lot with the Kennedys up in Boston. Do you remember? He used to.
You're not thinking about Ron Galella?
No, Ron was very experienced.
Yeah.
This young fella, he used to literally drive 6 hours up to Massachusetts to get pictures of the Kennedys on their estate in, where was it?
What, you mean Hyannisport?
Hyannisport,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah. And he actually, bought a very cheap boat and put a hole in the side of the boat and used to stick his lens through that to get pictures of them on the estate.
You sure that wasn't Galella?
No, it wasn't Galella. Honestly, it was a young fella. But anyway, the point of my story is he was so inexperienced that he, again... got in the wrong place with Mick Jagger's bodyguards after Mick Jagger's second child to Jerry Hall was born.
Right.
And was it Murray Hill, the hospital there, where they...
there was a hospital... No, what do you think? Lennox Hill?
Lennox Hill, that's right, yeah. You got Lennox Hill.
Upper East Side.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Anyway, they came out, they went back to... Mick Jagger had that brownstone in New York on the Upper East Side.
It was like Upper 77th Street
that's
or something
right, something like that, yeah. And this guy's waiting. Everybody got out of the car, rushed towards him. He got in the way and he got knocked into the basement well.
Right.
Because obviously it had a lower ground floor type entrance.
Right.
He got knocked into it, and I was subpoenaed to act as a witness for that assault, and he ended up getting about $20,000.
Well, Ron Galella famously got a big payout. He was the first one to get a massive payout from, I think it was one of Marlon Brando's bodyguards.
Right.
Because they beat him up quite severely.
Oh, I see.
And he got an absolute fortune out of it.
Right, okay, yeah.
Because he knows. But nowadays, of course, none of that really happens to the same degree.
No, it doesn't.
But now it's all videos. It's all video ratsies that they do running around in, and it's all websites like TMZ.
That's right. And do you remember how Piers, our old friend Piers Morgan, who's, I think, enjoying a few days' holiday at the moment, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Because we've often the opportunity to talk to
well,
us
we
about
did.
all things,
We were hoping to get him on the show this week,
absolutely.
but Freddie's away.
But
thanks for sharing that.
That's okay, don't worry. Because I want him to feel the shame.
The shame?
I want him to feel the shame.
What, just because you don't go on holiday, you don't think anyone else should?
No, not at all, not at all. But Piers knew George Michael quite well, but the way he got to really know him was Piers worked out that the last 10 times... They had a picture of George Michael in the paper that Piers was working for at the time. I think he was head of Bizarre.
Yeah.
He had the same black T-shirt on.
Uh-huh.
And then George Michael eventually admitted, Piers will correct the story, that he had 40.
40 black T-shirts?
Yeah, he only ever wore them once, and then that was it,
Right.
But he loved black T-shirts. He thought it suited him. That's all he ever wore.
Yeah.
I remember the 40 pictures, you know what I mean, on the same page.
Right.
Of his 40 pictures all in
God,
the
it must
same...
have been a slow news day.
Well, no, it wasn't. It was great because, for instance, this was over a period of years, right? Now, if we took pictures of you every day for the next 3 years...
Well, you could do it with you because you're always wearing the same shirt.
No, I'm not. No, I wear a...
Your shirts are all identical.
No,
Striped and Pierre Cardin style.
No. I wear a collection of shirts, but they accord to my particular material pattern plan.
What?
Yeah.
What, you mean they're all striped?
No, not all striped, no, but they suit me.
Apart from that nice pink one you wore the other day, which is blue and white checked, as in fact it said on the receipt that you showed me.
It did indeed.
Unlike the one that you actually gave me.
It did.
We've got loads more coming up, including a cardiologist, and as Pete says, it had to happen eventually. I think Porky's had a good idea of getting a cardiologist on the show.
The idea.
This is Talk Sport.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
Well, Darcy's going on, of course, at Ali Pally. Dan Dawson's watching it for Talk Sport. What's going on, Dan?
Yeah, questionable choice of trousers from the world number 6 James Wade. Bright red numbers that he debuted in the first round here, but no question over the quality of the darts he is throwing. He leads 2-0 against the bronze Dodoni's Steve Beaton with an average of over 107. He's hitting 3/4 of his darts at doubles, James Wade, the former semi-finalist at this William Hill World Championship, playing as well as I've seen him on this Ali Pally stage. Already seen Kim Huybrechts through to the last 16, a 4-0 winner against the young German Max Hopp, despite having loads of German fans in the crowd, they couldn't lift their man to produce anything to really challenge the top player from Belgium. Jelle Klaassen, former Lakeside winner, takes on Northern Ireland's Brendan Dolan this afternoon as well. But right now, James Wade getting the job done. 2-0 up in a race to 4 against Steve Beaton. Dan Dawson, Alexandra Palace.
Dan, thanks very much indeed. A lot of people choosing the darts as their sort of afternoon's entertainment, their evening's entertainment these days as well. Funnily enough, Christmas television, I would say, seems to have taken a bit of a back seat this year because people get box sets. You know, people watch
I totally agree.
People watch stuff on the iPlayer,
Totally
they watch
agree.
stuff on Netflix, on Amazon and all that. We're going to talk to Kevin O'Sullivan now, a man who knows an awful lot about what goes on Christmas television screens and find out from him if it's any good this year, because to be honest, I haven't seen any of it. Kevin, a very good afternoon to you. Greetings of the season.
Hi guys, all right?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Very well
Good
indeed.
to,
I mean,
good
it's
to
kind
hear
of.
from
I mean,
you.
Christmas television's kind of passed me by this year because I didn't really watch
you
it.
and Mike, you're not the only one, mate. I think it's past millions and millions of people die.
Yeah.
We are actually in the throes of witnessing what I think is the sad death of Christmas television.
Yeah.
I mean, the top rating show on Christmas Day was Uncle Len Goodman's Farewell on the Christmas special, Strictly, which got 7.2 million.
Wow.
I mean, if you think back in the day, I think it was 1985, EastEnders got 30.1 million.
Sure, blimey.
1977, Morecambe and Wise got 29 million. It wasn't even the top show of the day.
Golly.
That was Mike Yarwood. So it used to be the case, certainly when I was growing up, where your mum and dad would say, "Come on, you're going to miss the beginning of Morecambe and Wise."
Yeah. Well, because there wasn't anything else to do then either, was there? I mean, you didn't really have as many distractions. Nobody had a computer. You didn't have games to play. You didn't have, your kids on iPads
I mean, you had
all over the place.
Cluedo and all that, didn't you? That you were supposed to sit down and do after dinner.
But that was always the middle class families.
Yeah, well, I suppose you're right. But Kev, the point is,
we're all watching telly.
Porky was probably working as doing a paper round or something.
Probably was. I was probably putting together tomorrow's papers. The point is, Kev, we can't just say, well, it's the quality of the programmes these days. The point is people have got not just so many choices in their leisure time, but we've got 300 channels on telly now. We had 4 in those days.
I think it's a vicious circle. Basically, you're right. Of course, there are lots of alternatives for people to do these days, like computer games, social media.
Yeah.
Kids, their relationship with the television is basically broken.
Oh, it's gone. It's gone.
So how do the channels, the terrestrial channels, respond to this? They've actually responded by providing less and less and less. So the only channel that even remotely bothers these days is BBC One, which basically puts out a compendium of its Christmas versions of its big hit shows, which is all right, it's fine, but they don't do very well. And what I noticed was, going back to the soap opera thing, which used to be a huge thing on Christmas Day, EastEnders, the big Christmas Day hour-long special, 5.9 million. Now that is not even a good audience on a regular Thursday or something.
Crikey.
So the soap and also the brilliant plot. The only time I really loved the soaps in the past was Christmas Day, when all the big storylines came to fruition and everything that could possibly go wrong did. Yeah. And they were sensational entertainment. Now they treat Christmas Day as a day when not many people watch, so they don't waste any good storylines.
Because there was a time, wasn't there, when the tabloids would be all over the story that was going to be broken on Christmas Day, and people paid loads of money to try and sneak a peek at what it was.
Do you remember Raquel coming back to see Curly in Coronation Street? She came in through the back door because
there was that. I mean, only about 4 or 5 years ago, a brilliant storyline when Max of EastEnders, Max Branning and Stacey's affair was revealed while all the family were gathered around the Christmas table. So these were great.
Wasn't that also the one where somebody got clubbed with an iron as well? Wasn't that a Christmas Day story?
Probably.
The Scottish guy.
All this stuff used to happen. Yeah. So that's gone. I watched it for my sins. I watched the Christmas soaps, and they were just nothing was happening.
No.
Nothing was happening.
No.
So that's
and
gone.
Got Netflix
and I think
and all that sort of stuff these days.
I think the whole thing about Netflix and the box set syndrome and people gravitating towards the streaming services. You're absolutely right. Of course, it's a massive factor, and it's getting bigger by the moment. But I do also think something cultural has happened to us as a people.
Yeah.
Our default reflex when sitting around as a family or a group of friends is not to switch the telly on anymore than it used to be. And frankly, the terrestrial channels hardly know what to do about it. ITV didn't bother with anything really except 1-2 hour unfestive May Grey, and Channel 4 shoved up compendiums of Gogglebox that nobody watches anymore.
I can't take May Grey seriously, Kev, because the only time I've ever watched the star of May Grey in anything before, there's always been a quip, a joke, a punchline, and I'm waiting for him to, I'm waiting for, what's his name?
Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah, Rowan Atkinson to do something like,
Mr. Bean.
Yeah, Mr. Bean or Blackadder.
It seems to me Rowan Atkinson, a very distinguished performer of many decades, he has two ways of acting. One, he pulls loads and loads of faces.
That's right.
Two, he's in May Grey and he pulls no faces
That's
whatsoever.
right, no expression whatsoever. You're absolutely right, yeah. Everything is so
went through the whole
serious.
show like a guy in a coma.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So serious. I tell you what.
But what about the we're talking about Netflix and stuff like that. I mean,
yeah.
things like the Grand Tour. I don't know how many of those you've seen. I mean, my kids quite like it, and they've started watching it every Friday now when it comes out on Amazon. I must say, I've got a bit tired of it already. I mean, is that making a dent in regular TV?
Look. I mean, the whole point about Netflix and Amazon Prime and the streaming services is they have no requirement, legally or otherwise, to reveal their viewing figures. Unlike the terrestrial channels, they legally have to tell us who's watching what. So you don't find out the numbers. Now, the thing about Amazon Prime is, and the Grand Tour, is I'm sure it's bought them in some subscriptions, which is the idea. But, I mean, I don't know the figures, but I'd be extremely surprised if there are anything like 1 million subscribers to Amazon Prime in this country. Yeah. You're talking hundreds of thousands. So the top potential audience that the Grand Tour could have got was in 6 figures. So,
and a lot of those, a lot of those people are only doing it for the free next day delivery from Amazon.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is also but it's also a free. A lot of it is a 3 months viewing, so people sign up for a month and then they unsign. So having said that, though, the march of Netflix and Amazon Prime, if they can get their finances right, because I think as things stand, they're spending too much on programs. What was it, 200 million for The Crown? I mean, they're never going to get that back. No. If they can, they're providing stuff that people want to watch. I got so many tweets from people over Christmas saying, "Oh, I watched Netflix, I watched Amazon Prime." Right. If they can get the finances right, then it's clearly the future. Sure. However, there are signs that they're struggling with the financial business model.
Did you ever see Young Pope? Did you see
Yeah.
Blimey, I watched that once, and that was
on Sky, wasn't it?
It was disappointing. I thought you could have done it not. How about doing it in a proper way as opposed to an Italian surrealist way?
Exactly. Exactly.
No, exactly right. Now, I know you're a big cycling fan, Kevin, so you may be devastated to know that Sir Bradley Wiggins just announced his retirement from cycling.
Oh wow, that's bad news for the
Tour de France.
For the asthma product.
Well, it's bad news for and the courier company as well that you used to use, I would imagine.
Well, and that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
How old is Bradley anyway?
How old is he?
Early 30s. Early 30s.
No, it's probably mid to late 30s.
No, I think so.
I mean, let's face it. The guy's. I mean, with all due respect to him, which he thoroughly deserves. Whatever you think of him, the guy has gone out with a massive cloud hanging over him. We still don't know quite what went on.
Bit of a shame, really, when you become as eminent as he is in his sport. You win the Tour de France, and that's it. You've done it.
It is terrible. Just go back to TV briefly, Kevin. Yeah. I mean, do you see in the next year or two, less and less sort of original programming being commissioned by what we regard as the old system of BBC and ITV, and just more and more movies being put on? Because that seems to me to what was all that was on at Christmas.
Well, I think it's this, that they, as I say, so far the terrestrial channels' response is to really not do very much, but not spend too much money on anything, which simply will not do. The terrestrial channels are stuck in this weird netherland in between putting on traditional schedules and basically supplying streaming services. So the iPlayer, ITV Hub, Channel 4 OD, these are streaming services, but they're linked to schedules. So what's going to happen? They're going to become more and more pick and mix, cherry pick the programs you want and less scheduling. So everything is going to go down. But as such, there's going to be more and more of these live shows, because that, of course, is a speciality that television can still produce, like the X Factor. And
although a report on Simon Cowell's companies this morning says that the programmes that he's putting out in this country are taking a dip.
Well, the X Factor died a death this year, the worst ever series. Useless ratings, down in the 5 millions. And worse than that, right at the end, Talk pulled out of its 10-year sponsorship.
Wow.
So something is not right with the good ship X Factor. ITV, of course, next year, in just about a week's time, will launch their first series of The Voice. Oh yeah. So ITV's response to this changing world really has been to say, right, pretty much every night of the year there's an interactive contest going on that you can take part in. So that's their response. The BBC seems to me to be producing more and more stuff for the iPlayer, and just saying, well, we're still the one that people watch, which again isn't really good enough. And God knows what fate will befall Channel 4, because the Christmas Bake Off got 6.3 million. Now, that sounds all right, but if you think the 13 million watched the recent final, and when it goes to Channel 4, they're not going to have 4 of the presenters. Sure. They are not going to get their money back. They genuinely spent 75 million quid on a tent.
I know, it's not very sensible, is it? Listen, Kev, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Have a great new year. We'll talk to you soon. Kevin O'Sullivan there, TV critic extraordinaire. We've got loads coming up. We'll talk about Bradley Wiggins, who's just announced his retirement from cycling, in the next hour. We'll also be talking to a cardiologist about Porky's heart, or at least 1/3 of it that works. And we'll be looking ahead to the Southampton Spurs game tonight, of course, as well. This is TalkSport. Good afternoon, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to Two Mikes on TalkSport. Coming up in this hour, it's Ask Porky, the only place where you can get sound advice, whether it be for a personal problem or possibly an investment situation, or any number of other sporting questions that he may be answering coming up a little bit later on. If you haven't done it yet, you can send us a tweet at the Two Mikes, or look for us on our Facebook page, The Two Mikes, of course. We'll also be talking to Dr. Luke Dancy about Mr. Parry's heart problem. We'll touch upon Bradley Wiggins, who's now just announced his retirement from cycling. Loads more as well. 08717 22 3344. You're listening to Two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on TalkSport. TalkSport, we are the Two Mikes. There will be Porky Vision coming up tomorrow, of course, and then the Porky Quiz on 2016, a news quiz, basically. Maybe some sport in it, I suppose, as well.
Well,
the Independent Quizmasters.
Events that happened through 2016.
Yes, so it could be sport as well. Now, Bradley Wiggins retiring from cycling. You shocked by that?
Am I shocked by that? Yeah. I'm not a huge devotee of cycling. There's been a
you hate cyclists, don't you?
I'm very much against the amount of road space that cyclists take in our major cities these days. It's disproportionate to the amount of space they need, how long they use it, and how much they pay for it. But that's a different story. The point is, there's been an enormous debate going on within the world of cycling about the influence of drugs on competitors. Yeah. A very long-running debate. I know Sir Brailsford was in the House of Commons a few weeks ago, and he got a lot of criticism for answering questions that could have been answered. Others said 2 and 3 months ago, but weren't. And I know there's a huge debate going on. However, I'm not making judgment on Sir Bradley Wiggins. No. To my mind, he's still a British hero.
There are some, including Piers Morgan, that you mentioned earlier, who thinks he should be stripped of his knighthood.
Well, to me, until people prove differently, he's still a British hero. He won the Tour de France on the continent, which is an enormous achievement. He did it before other British competitors followed him. And as far as I'm concerned, until it's proven that there's something else wrong, he remains a British hero to me.
And the thing that's interesting as well is that Bradley Wiggins is one of those people who has made cycling into a sort of a massive sport. Because because it is now a massive sport in this country. People turn out.
Well,
I mean, I'll never forget during the Olympics in 2012. I was down in Surrey at one point, just pottering about visiting a couple of people, and it turned out that the race was on that day, and the numbers of people lining the streets,
switchback at Box Hill and all that.
and you would hear people talking on the trains about cycling and about the peloton. Well, I never heard of the word peloton until then, right? And now everybody talks about the peloton.
I agree. I think Chris Hoy and Victoria Pendleton sort of led the way a little bit, didn't they? From a previous generation cyclist. But nevertheless.
But that was more indoor track, wasn't it?
Yeah,
whereas
it was.
the reason that you now see, whenever you drive around at the weekends, huge pelotons of people dressed in lycra cycling around in groups is down to people like Bradley Wiggins. Here's what he says. He said that he's fulfilled his childhood aspiration of making a career out of the sport. I've met my idols and ridden with and alongside the best for 20 years. 2016 is the end of the road for this chapter. He says onwards and upwards. He says kids from Kilburn don't win Olympic golds and the Tour de France. Well, they do now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's going out, I suppose you would say, at the top of his game, perhaps, but there are questions being asked, and he's kind of got a cloud over him, hasn't he?
Yes, he's got a cloud over him because there's too many unanswered questions. However, I've got to stick with the line, and that is that until somebody proves to me that he's done something wrong, which hasn't been proven at all, there are a lot of questions, he remains a British hero when he conquered the continent.
And I would say the country's pretty much split. If you're judging the country's mood by Twitter, it's the top trending subject on Twitter at the moment. And I would say about 50% of the people are wishing him the best. The other 50% are saying, well, he's retiring before we find out what really happened.
Well, that's for the future. That's a different judgment. I mean, I tell you what I think is a terribly, terribly sad occurrence is when somebody gets right to the top and distinguishes themselves as, a hugely talented and successful member of their profession or sport. It could be either. And I'm thinking now of Maria Sharapova, who has suddenly hit a blinking cliff or a wall or something when allegations against you are not just made but enforced.
Yeah. She was found to have used an illegal drug, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Even though she claimed that she didn't know it was illegal at the time.
Exactly. And I think that's very sad because it means that your whole life has been wasted in
except she hasn't retired, though, has she?
No,
she's going to come back, and in which case she can prove to the world that it wasn't actually something that was performance-enhancing, presumably.
Well,
and that she was only taking it for medicinal purposes. Yeah. He is Britain's most decorated Olympian, with 5 gold medals in his haul of 8 medals. In 2000, he won his first Olympic medal, the bronze in Sydney. So, I mean, the guy is a bit of a legend, sporting-wise, isn't he?
Completely legend. And as he quite rightly says, he's a working-class boy who broke through into a profession that had a bit of a sort of a middle-class feel about it, didn't it? Or certainly a...
it wasn't something that Brits particularly did, was it?
Wasn't,
I mean, the Tour de France was... I mean, you'd always be amazed at the numbers of people like from Belgium and France and Spain and Italy and all those countries where cycling is massive. But it's now become massive here.
Well, I'm not sure if it's become massive. It's just novelty. I think it's just novelty, isn't it? But, I don't think you find many people in this country... If the Tour de France didn't touch on our shores, which it has done regularly, hasn't it, over the years...
Last couple of times,
I'm not sure how many people would say, oh, crikey, I've got to take 2 weeks holiday and get over to Belgium and France or Spain or whatever and watch the Tour de France.
Yeah, but I think more people now do that because of people like Bradley Wiggins. And I would imagine more and more kids are taking up cycling and hoping to see themselves rising to the same level of celebrity and financial success that people like him have had.
Yeah, no.
I mean, when you consider, for example, I remember when I was growing up, there was a guy that lived in my building who was a mad cyclist. Yeah. And he had an Eddie Merckx bike, which I used to think was amazing. He used to go out every Saturday and ride for sort of 50, 60 miles and come back.
Yeah.
And it was when I first heard the phrase the bonk. He used to get the bonk, which is something that you get when you've been riding a bike for too long.
What happens?
And you become sort of stuck in one position, sitting on the bike. And you have to, I remember him telling me about this, you just fall off it. You literally couldn't get off the bike.
What, you mean your muscles lock into position and you're like...
you ride for that length of time,
you like become a dummy.
Well, basically, and you can't basically move your legs because they've been in that one position for such a long time. And he said the only way that he could get off the bike was to literally fall off it. Yeah, to just tip it over.
Stupid.
And then crawl away. Well, I mean, it's a very. You need a lot of stamina to do it.
I had a small flat. Well, in fact, I still got a small flat in one particular block, but it was top floor.
Where?
It was third floor in Surrey.
Oh yeah. And what, you mean not the one you live in?
Oh no, not the one I live in. No, it's one that I rent out.
Oh right.
And
it's an Egyptian doctor.
No, it's a different one to that.
Uh-huh.
And one time I was told they had a new tenant, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I happened to need to go round there.
A few weeks nose later. Around?
Not to nose around, because there was
some awful landlord.
No, there was some remedial work that needed doing, And I found,
Really?
Yeah, I found...
You're supposed to inform them if you want to turn up.
Yeah, I always do. And I found a bike in the hallway on the third floor.
Right.
And I said, what is this? He said, it's my bike.
Yeah.
And I said, you're not allowed to have bikes on the third floor. I said,
Why not?
I said...
Well, who said that?
I did.
Which rule was that?
My rule.
Well, you don't own the third floor. You only own one part of it.
I said...
1/3 of it,
There's
maybe.
a bike shed out there, and you put the bikes in there. He said, oh, well, yeah. He said, but, it's a very expensive bike. And I said, I don't care, mate. You do not... I said, is that what all the marks are on the wall? Because I noticed there were marks on the... going up and down the stairs on the newly painted yellow walls, which I'd commissioned, to be painted. And I said, that's what all the marks are. He said, oh, no, I don't... I said, well, they're not anything else. I said, you're telling me you're hauling this bike up and down the stairs?
Yeah.
He said... well,
That's a terrible way to harass your tenant,
he said, I have to train twice a day. I said, twice a day? He said, yeah, I go out at 5:30 in the morning and I go out at 6:30 at night when I come back in from work.
Right.
I said, and you haul this bike up and down? He said, yeah. I said, you're not doing it anymore. You were not doing it.
So what was the result of this particular conflagration?
I banned him, and what I did was I was quite clever, actually.
Really?
I got a...
Can't wait.
I got a workman to... the
Workman?
Yeah, the doors downstairs to get out of, right, they were on a spring. I got a workman to tighten the spring so tight that only a human being could get through it, not him and his bike.
That's shocking.
It crushed his
No,
bike.
you don't even own the building, though. You can't do that. What about everybody else that lived there?
Yeah, but I mean, the property is worth what the building is worth, if you see what I mean. And I wasn't going to have him scraping walls. And I mean, he was leaving wet tyre marks on the carpet and all that kind of stuff. It was disgusting behaviour, disgraceful.
Right.
So I told him.
So what happened then? Did he end up leaving?
Yes, of course he did.
So you chased him out, in other words?
I curtailed his lease.
So have you now got a lease that you give out to people in your many properties that says no cyclists allowed?
Well, it's standard part. Another one is standard, is that you don't allow cats or anything like that.
You don't have pets, that's fair enough. But I've never seen no bikes.
On one occasion, somebody tried to smuggle a cat in, but I sort of sorted that out.
Really?
That's
awful.
I mean, they can be a menace, these people.
How did you find out about the cat?
A neighbour told me.
What, so there was a grass in the building?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And what were you just poking about there again?
No, I went and sorted it.
No, but how did you find out from the neighbour? The neighbour didn't ring you?
Yeah, the neighbour notified the managing agent who managed the property. And we...
There's some horrible people out there, aren't there?
There are some horrible people out there.
Really horrible. You're one of them. What did you do about the cat then?
We just banned it. We just said
Well,
it's got to go. We said it had to go because she was breaching the lease, the terms of the lease. She signed a lease and all that. We said, the cat goes or you go.
So what happened to the cat?
No idea. And it was of no concern of mine.
Maybe it's still there.
No, it's not. And it never appeared again, believe me.
Really?
No problem at all. And also, I charged her £250 to clean the flat out. And she said, but the cat never caused any problem. Yeah. I said, I don't believe you.
That's horrible.
Cats are,
You are dreadful.
Cats urinate person. On things, and I'm not having it. So I had it all cleaned out.
Really? Dear me, this is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport. We are the two mics. Ask Porky coming up very, very shortly. Also, we're going to be talking to Dr. Luca Dancy about heart problems, specifically Mr. Parry's heart problems. I'm wondering if you've actually got a heart after some of the things you just said about your behaviour as a slum landlord.
Nice, isn't it?
A couple of people are saying that you are like Nicholas Van What's-His-Face, says Steve. Remember that Hoogstraten guy? Who was an absolutely horrid landlord.
Who built the biggest individual house in Britain, but then stopped building it 2/3 of the way through.
Right.
It's down in Sussex, actually, near you.
Is that right? Bell says, Porky's psychopathic behaviour to cyclists is worrying. A copper's narc grassing on the cyclist. Porky's like Rackman.
No.
And on Bradley Wiggins, Pete says, Bradley Wiggins made cycling cool. I hope his legacy lasts. And I think that's true.
Yes, I think it's true.
And he made it accessible to people. And I don't think you're right to say that it's not a massive sport in this country now, because I think it really is.
I may be out of touch with that.
Look how many people you see out there cycling, and they're doing it because of what the success of Britain's cyclists has been.
You know, the other thing I liked as well, after he won it, he actually went off and got completely bladderated on large gin and tonics.
So you like that about him?
Yeah, of course I do.
Man of the people.
It shows that, he's not just
Well, it doesn't show much respect for his body.
It does, but it shows he's not just a gifted and dedicated athlete and cyclist and a world-beating person in his profession, but he's happy to unwind and relax when it's all over, you know?
Nick says this, Porky's like Rigsby from Rising Damp. No wonder he's always busy. Spends his evening spying on his tenants.
No, very
It's
harsh.
true.
Very
anyway,
harsh.
your heart is in no condition to do that sort of thing or get that sort of excitement.
Absolutely
Let's talk to Luke Dancy from King's College Hospital, who's the cardiology registrar there, because you've got some questions for him. Luke, a very good afternoon to you.
Hi.
Hi, Luke. Thanks very much for joining us. I didn't actually have any questions about myself because
you did.
No. The background is Luke, that I've got dilated cardiomyopathy, and I've had it for 10 years. But you live with it. But what I'm saying is, 2 deaths of very, very prominent people, Carrie Fisher and George Michael, which we've sadly come to learn about over the last 4 days, were both related to latent heart problems. And I'm thinking to myself, how many people walk around not knowing when a time bomb might explode in their chest?
I think it's a very valid question to ask. It's difficult to talk about this without sounding really quite negative.
Yes.
But heart disease per se is about the biggest killer that we have in the Western world at the moment. People in general fall into 2 categories. They fall into those that have established heart disease, and how can we keep them alive and keep them well, and people who don't yet have established heart disease and who may be running the risk of developing it, and establishing which group you fall into, but also how to maximise your chances of living a healthy life and a long life, and not developing severe or end stage heart disease is really the challenge for individuals, but also the health service and our government.
Yeah, it does seem difficult, I suppose, to come up with a sort of a rescue plan, if you like, for the numbers of people who suffer from heart problems, because they come from so many different sort of places, don't they? I mean, it can either be lifestyle related, it can be hereditary in some way. It seems to me that it's a bit of a lottery, really.
There are 2 broad categories. Again, the risks for developing heart disease. One category is things we do to ourselves, and the other category is things that are in our genetic makeup to a certain extent. Now, if it's a genetic, predisposition, all of the lifestyle measures that help everybody will contribute towards helping that. But certainly, it's not a rescue remedy that we're looking for. It's a prevention. And the big impact that we've made on people dying from heart disease over the last few years has been through helping people to understand what damage they're doing to their own bodies by living a particular lifestyle or not exercising or whatever it may be. And that's really where it's got to go, that in good therapy when problems arise. But prevention, as with all these things, is much better than cure.
Yeah, so because I'm quite concerned about my broadcasting partner here, because he's always claiming to have this what do you call it, cardiomyopathy.
I've got dilated cardiomyopathy because you've seen the letter from my registrar at Harefield Hospital.
Yeah, but he also says, right, that his heart is actually now working better than it was when he was first diagnosed with it, where 33% of it was working. Now 49% of it is working. So I'm worried, I'm concerned that either one, he hasn't got that, he's got something else that's the problem, or 2, that his lifestyle is not conducive to him living for a long time.
Well, without knowing enough about Mr. Parry's lifestyle, it's difficult to comment. But
he spends a lot of time in the pub.
No, it's a very clean lifestyle.
I've no doubt.
Yes,
but I think the key thing is dilated cardiomyopathy. All that does is describe a heart that is enlarged, dilated, and cardiomyopathy purely means that the muscle cells are not working. There's a lot of different causes for dilated cardiomyopathy, some of which will get better, some of which don't get better and progress and get worse. One thing that is important to say is that really good medical therapy with tablets, which I'm sure have been established in your case,
absolutely,
have a huge amount of impact and have made massive strides in making people better, from these particular conditions. I think it's important to say that nobody has 100% heart function.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Normal heart function is around between the sort of 55 to 60%.
Yeah.
And so, around the 50 would show we would consider a very significant improvement in function.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I take carvedilol as my main drug, Doc, which I'm sure you know all about, and then digoxin and things like that. But what I was going to...
7 tablets a day you take them?
Not now. I used to when I first came out of hospital. It's down a bit now. But, sorry, Luke, are you a doctor or a mister?
I'm a doctor.
Oh, you're a doctor. Okay, Doc. I want to call you doctor because I like to be respectful.
Just call him Doc.
I'll call him Doc, yeah. Doc, the thing is, look, I'm not speaking ill of the dead or anything like that, but some pop stars who have extraordinary lifestyles, and some of them live to a ripe old age, like Keith Richard, who's never hidden the things he's got up to in his life. I mean, at some stage... your body's going to kick back, isn't it? If you've gone through that sort of hedonistic decade or several decades of your life.
Yes, I think the overwhelming evidence would suggest that there are always people who appear to live a specific lifestyle for decades and decades with no problems. But the overwhelming evidence is if you do, smoke enormous amounts, drink a huge amount of alcohol, it will catch up with you eventually. And therefore...
Bad news for you then, Porky.
That's very nice, isn't it? Yeah, take no notice, Doctor. Please go on.
I think when you're thinking about how you can work on your own life, seeing somebody who's lived till 90, living however they appear to want to, is not the blueprint you should be looking for. I think it's important that you need to assume, to a certain extent, negative though it seems, that you're going to be in the category whose body is and heart is susceptible to smoking, which is got to be the single biggest influenceable lifestyle change you can make if you do smoke.
Yeah. No, I don't. I don't smoke.
Well, you do occasionally.
No, I don't. No.
Yeah, you do.
Very, very rarely.
I've got pictures of you smoking.
No. Once in a lifetime type thing. Yeah.
Well, I've got more than one picture.
Don't confuse our doctor.
I know about this. I've got this from John in Blackpool. He says Porky says he's careful about what he eats, but then he goes to KFC and orders £40 worth of chicken. Well, he shouldn't be eating that kind of food, should he?
No, as a general rule. I mean, as with all these things, it's all things in moderation. Now, if you had fried chicken once in a blue moon, coupled it with exceptionally healthy living, lots of good exercise, lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, then you can potentially counterbalance that. However, if we're honest with ourselves, how frequently is our once in a blue moon? Often it tends to creep in kind of convenience type, processed type foods that are easier.
Yeah, I agree. Doctor, the one thing I'd love to convince everybody, and I keep beating the drum about it, is I can walk up to 20 or 25 miles a week because it is the single most important thing in my life to be mobile. Keeps my... What are you laughing at?
Because you don't.
I do.
Rubbish.
And it keeps your weight down. It literally lubricates your joints and all that kind of stuff. Getting out in the fresh air is good for your skin, good for your mind and everything. I just don't know why other people don't do it. It's completely free. You don't have to join a gym. You don't have to buy equipment. You just go and walk.
Regular exercise is absolutely key. I think if you are 25 years old with no previous heart conditions, walking is not exercise. It doesn't provide sufficient challenge to your body. It doesn't get your heart rate up enough and isn't sufficiently aerobic. But as you get older, the need to get your heart rate up to properly exercise your heart is the heart rate you need to achieve is lower, making it easier for you to do that. Yeah. So walking, particularly with people who have a heart condition who have to do moderate, regular exercise without overexerting themselves, it's an ideal exercise.
Indeed.
However, if you're young, fit and relatively healthy, you need to be looking at doing that little bit more to achieve the same amount of aerobic exercise.
I see, yeah.
So walking's not really going to help you, in other words?
It is going to help me, of course it is.
I'm not sure you're going to see this time next year the way things are going.
Sorry?
I'm not sure you're going to see this time next year
the way
things are
going.
going.
Black humour, Doc, he's trying to just worry me about it. Don't worry, I know exactly how to live my lifestyle. And sorry about smoking. My colleague here will deny this, but he smokes 40 cigarettes a day.
Hey?
You smoke 40 cigarettes
a
day? How many do you smoke?
20.
20. Look at that. He's boasting about he only smokes 20 a day.
I'm not boasting at all.
You're
telling you the
walking
truth.
You are.
Well, you're the one that says only 1 in 30 heart works.
Yeah, well, that's the doctors.
Would you say, Luke, that he shouldn't drink as very heavily in terms of alcohol?
So I think we, as a population, are aware that alcohol causes liver disease. I think certain people in the past who've suffered with that have helped to highlight that fact. Yes. I think it's less known that actually one of the causes of heart pump failure, so the ability of the heart to pump, is alcohol. So excess alcohol can cause your heart to get bigger and not work as well.
Indeed.
And I'm not sure that that's so well understood. Yeah. And the other thing to say about it is, if that is the cause for you to develop problems with your heart, complete abstinence from alcohol has been shown to actually improve things fairly markedly.
So it could have caused the myopathy in the first place, then?
Well, no, it wasn't actually, Doc. I do know that it was inherited from my father. My father died of it when he was 58, and you know what? In those days, and this was, I'm talking about now, 1980, 1981, there hadn't been a heart transplant operation in this country, and they didn't know about the symptoms that my father was suffering. It was only when I started suffering them some 14 years ago, they got his medical records and found out he had exactly the same symptoms.
Well, there is certainly certain forms of dilated cardiomyopathy that do run in families.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shocking stuff. Well, listen, Luke, thank you very much indeed for taking the time
Thanks,
to talk
Doc.
to us. Luke Dancy there, King's College Hospital Cardiology Registrar. I think there's some worrying stuff in that conversation.
Well, you should be more worried than me.
Why?
Because people who smoke 20 cigarettes a day
You said you
are
shouldn't
literally...
drink at all.
You're a walking coffee.
You shouldn't drink at all.
I don't hardly drink at all. I told you what I ingested yesterday at a family celebration.
Nobody believes that.
2 glasses.
Nobody believes that.
Well, I believe it because I was there.
You had a drink today?
No.
You sure?
Well, not much.
Yes. And so I'm going to ask you to be as brief as you possibly can and as helpful as you can possibly be.
I will be.
First question is from Bob. It says, I'm a guy who strives to push the envelope in everything I do in life, but I've just suffered a major setback after performing humiliatingly badly in my job and have consequently been fired. Can you offer me any advice as to how I can pick myself up and get myself back in the saddle?
Well, this is obviously a skit on Bobcat Barb, and we've been through all that on the show today. Look, the point is, you do have setbacks in life. Everybody does. And honestly, it's a mark of a man, a mark of a woman, if you can bounce back and get on with it. I was speaking to somebody who's a fellow presenter of ours the other night. He was having a go at... who was having a go at? He was having a go at somebody else named Paul. Was having at somebody. No, it was Paul who I was talking to, and I said, "Look, we all smash our lives up sometimes. We all get back on the in the saddle, get back on the bike, and go with it." Resilience is one of the greatest qualities of life. Find your own resilience.
Tarek says this: I've been tiling my kitchen since 8 a.m. I've had the offer of bladderisation. Do I sack off the tiling or get it done?
Well, on a day like today, which is between Christmas and New Year, I think everybody deserves to take a step or two backwards, to be honest. I mean, most of us work very, very hard for, I would say, from January the 1st till about December the 23rd or 24th every year. And I do feel that the period between Christmas and New Year should be treated as a bit of a bonus on terms of leisure time. So if I were you, mate, I would forget the tiling and do it on another weekend, maybe in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, when life is back to normal. Enjoy the
bad news for the people who want the tiling done.
Well, yeah, but I should enjoy a bit of leisure time while you can.
OK, Max says this: I will be in Rome listening to you live, waiting for my plane to Japan to leave. Have you ever been there? And if so, what should I see? Also, any tips on the 11-hour flight I face?
Is this to Japan?
To Japan.
Yeah, I turned down a trip to Japan once because my sister was getting married and I had to give her away. And I was due to go
It's the
there.
only thing you've ever given away in your life.
For the Express. And so I've never been to Japan. That's the answer to that one. And the second part of your question is, yes, listen to a load of Two Mike's podcasts to keep you in touch with the real world whilst you're there.
OK. How about this one from Richard, another sort of international question. I've started a new job in Mexico City beginning in January. The problem is, by law, you get no holiday in your first year. I have my best mate's wedding in June, and I can make either the stag 3 weeks earlier in Ibiza or the wedding in the Cotswolds. What should I do?
You've got to go to the wedding in the Cotswolds, mate. It's no good being self-indulgent and saying, well, I'm going to go off with me mates to Ibiza and get bladderated for, a weekend or something like that. That's not that's not doing your mate any favours. The real favour is taking the one break you're going to get in a year and be there for him at his wedding.
Kelly says this: some people actually believe they can remember being in the womb. What is your earliest memory?
My earliest memory is being in my mother's lap in a car, coming home from hospital and watching the street lights successively go past as we went under other ones.
Was that when you had the...
being dazzled by
Was that
them.
when you'd had the ball of fat removed?
Yeah, that's right,
stomach?
yeah, absolutely. It was from Arrogate... what was it called? Arrow... Park... No, it was Arrow Park Hospital, I think, on the Wirral. Arrow something. Anyway, somebody will correct me.
What did they do with the ball of fat, anyway?
Well, I've no idea, have I? How do I know?
Well, I don't know. It's your ball of fat.
A silly question.
All right. Here's one from Shaw. He says, out of the following, which do you think will happen first? Everton winning the league again or the Two Mikes website being completed?
Well, it's a good question. The Two Mikes website will be completed in the new year, so we'll get there first. However, the prospects of Everton winning the Premier League title for the first time is getting closer.
Here's one from Ragnar who says, which of these abilities would you like to be able to do the most? Fly, be invisible, change political system, and why? And what would you do with these powers?
I would like to be invisible so that I could actually go around finding out what is going on in the world and then have the ability with the knowledge to put it right.
OK. Here's one from Andrew. He says, listen to Mr. Bill Kenwright's excellent Radio 2 show on Christmas Day. He played Harry Belafonte's a long time ago in Bethlehem as his favourite Christmas song. Now, how did Porky describe Harry's song on the run-up to Christmas?
Harry Belafonte's song? I didn't describe it at all.
Mary's Boy Child. We were talking about it.
Mary's Boy Child, yeah. Yeah, but I was talking about the version from Boney M, which clearly wasn't as good as Harry Belafonte's. And, if that's what the chairman of Everton Football Club says is the best song, then I'm with him.
OK. How about this from Tom? If, like Clattenburg, the referee, Porky had to have 3 tattoos representing his 3 greatest achievements, most beautiful things, etc., what would the tattoos represent?
Well, crikey, that's a good question to be put on the spot on, isn't it? One of them, of course, would be my preeminence as a print journalist. One of them would be my preeminence as a broadcasting journalist. The third one would be for just being a damn good human being.
OK, so those would be the 3 tattoos.
Yes.
Nothing about anybody else, obviously.
Well, I haven't got time
like
to consider anybody else in a situation like that.
Jonathan says, I cut my leftover clove-infused Christmas gammon into cubes and froze them. Will they be best with a cheesy or carbonara sauce, served with some pasta, or shall I stir some into some freshly made pea soup? What do you think?
Oh, definitely into the pea soup, man. That would be lovely. It would be a real broth, wouldn't it? And I'd cut them, when you've defrosted them, cut them even smaller so they don't sort of all sink to the bottom of the pan when you're doing the soup.
OK. Wrong Star says, what do you do when something is so difficult it makes you feel inadequate and want to quit?
I don't know. I've never had that feeling.
That's your straight answer.
Yes, please.
Well, have you got some advice for somebody who does have that feeling?
Well, I can't help, can I? Because I've never been there.
OK. Andrea says, hey, Porky, where's the best place to go New Year's Eve? In London or somewhere? And what are you and old MG up to on New Year's Eve?
Well, I think old MG, can't speak for him, but I assume he's going with his family down in Sussex. The issue is that we are working on New Year's Day, so it will be bladderation, extreme moderation, wherever we are. I myself
will be working New Year's Eve, won't we? I mean, during the afternoon.
Yes, but we're not working New Year's Eve like at midnight.
No.
When it changes the year. So it'll be
indeed.
bladderation in moderation, back here on New Year's Day. I myself will settle down with a glass of port and a cheese sandwich to watch a bit of television on New Year's Eve.
A glass of port and a cheese sandwich? You know how to live, don't you?
Yes, I do, yes.
Yeah. Will you be snooping on any of your tenants?
No, I won't be, no.
See whether they're having any parties?
No.
That you haven't allowed them to have in the lease?
Not at all.
Are you
not
sure?
At all. Absolutely.
Mark says this, Porky, I hate my job, but I have a family to support and feel the responsibility to continue in the role. How can I make the job more bearable whilst trying to find something else?
Well, you won't make that job more bearable because you don't like it. So what you do is you have a secret plotting system in your head, a secret plan to get out, right? You've got to work your ticket out of that job and into another one. Now, you don't work every waking hour. You spend some hours asleep, you spend some hours with your family, some hours at work, but you will have a spare hour or two a day. That's when you go in search of that other job. It could be anything. There's lots of opportunities these days to do something different. Become an Uber driver, or become a taxi driver, or a black cab driver, or a minicab driver, or something like that. That will give you then the freedom to explore other things.
OK. Here's one from Pete. A friend of mine is ridiculed for the way he speaks. Should he kick ass or turn the other cheek?
I would turn the other cheek. If he's ridiculed from the way he speaks because he's got some sort of, disablement or something, well, you just don't take any notice. You get on with life. If, on the other hand, you need elocution lessons, then go and get them. Because speaking well is definitely something that can help you improve your lot in life and get on better with other people.
How about this from Chase? Should I swap Ross Barkley for Moussa Sissoko with my mate on FIFA?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, Sissoko blows hot and cold. Ross Barkley, we know, is actually the essence of that famous expression, form is temporary, class is permanent.
Indeed. And Stephen says, Dear Porky, if Giggs gets Bobcat's job, will you be working on your Manc accent? P.S. Where do you buy your cool shirts?
Cool shirts come from Pink, as Mr. Graham, if he was a more grateful recipient of my presents, would know.
Except that wasn't a pink shirt.
And as for the Manc accent, I got the Manc accent already, you know what I mean? Like,
that sounds like Liverpool, doesn't it?
No. Hey, kids, have you been out to the lavvy or what? Hey, come on, kid, get the Boddingtons in.
You sure that's not Gilo you're doing?
No, definitely not. I don't know anybody called
Well,
Gilo.
Jamie says, now that Bobcat Bob has been sacked, can you still keep the impression going on a regular basis? I need the Americans to stay on our radar.
No, because you see, there was never any attempt to try and belittle Bobcat Bob Bradley, by impersonating the way he spoke. It was to illustrate that how he spoke and what he said in speaking, the words that were combined in his phrases, weren't getting across to his players. That was the whole point of it.
There's only time for one final short question. Hey, Porky, what's your next big prediction in the world of football, says Mark?
My next big prediction in the world of football, perhaps it's not a very clever one, Chelsea for the Premier League title.
That's it?
Yep.
That was Ask Porky. World Darts Championship still going on, of course, at Ali Pally. Let's head over to Dan Dawson and find out what's going on. Dan?
Yeah, cries of anguish in the hall here as Jelle Klaassen, the former Lakeside world champion, misses out on the perfect leg. 7 perfect darts into the 9-darter, but he pulled the 8th one. He was aiming at treble 19. He put it in the skinny bit of the 7. However, he's just hit double 18 to take the deciding leg in the opening set with Northern Ireland's Brendan Dolan. Really good start to this match, both men averaging 99. Saw similar stuff from Steve Beaton, the bronze Adonis, and James Wade, the world number 6. But Wade just hitting the right shot at the right time, ran out a 4-1 winner. He's through to the last 16 of the William Hill World Championship, as is Kim Huybrechts, the top player from Belgium, a 4-0 winner against Max Hopp, despite strong German support in the crowd here at Ali Pali. But right now, Jelle Klaassen 1-0 up in a race to 4 with Brendan Dolan. Dan Dawson, Alexandra Palace.
Thanks very much indeed, Dan. Kelly's not very happy with you. He says,
yes.
Oh, for heaven's sake, Mike Parry has just predicted Chelsea are going to win the league. Hashtag Porky Jinx.
Yeah, but I said it's not a very clever prediction because they're so odds on now to do it, and they've got such an outstanding run of form behind them. Which will probably continue. So it wasn't the boldest prediction, was it?
I suppose it wasn't really,
yeah.
But what it might be, though, is a jinx on Chelsea now that you've predicted it.
I don't think
that quite often happens. Dodge says this, shame they missed that great ball of fat between Porky's ears.
Hey, that's a bit harsh,
a little bit harsh.
Yeah.
And how about this one from Wrong Star after our conversation with the heart specialist?
Yeah.
He says, this doctor is clearly unaware of Porky's self-healing abilities.
That's right, yeah. Well, you know, I do have
you weren't being entirely honest with him, were you, really?
I was completely honest with him.
I don't think so.
What was I dishonest about?
Well, I mean, you made out that you walk 30 miles a week and that you live a very healthy lifestyle.
Which I try to do.
You can try to, but doing it is one thing, and
not
trying it is not.
Here's
one thing from Kirk. He says, all things in moderation. I'd say the doc must be a listener to the show.
Yeah, well, he could well be, and therefore recognised with my, the enormous burden I've been carrying since 2004, and, my tremendous effort, strength, courage, and willpower to get over it.
Also, somebody's posted this rather unusual picture of you with what appears to be about 6 cigarettes in your mouth, all lit.
Oh, no,
where it says, I don't smoke, Mike Parry, 2016.
That's a joke. That was a joke.
Well, he's still smoking.
No, he was. Somebody asked me if I would do a little video thing as a tribute to somebody, and what you do is, it's a trick. What you do is you get a packet of cigarettes, and then you take the top off, so you've got 20 cigarettes, all with the filters. Then you put them all in your mouth, right? And then you slide the rest of the packet off, so you've actually got 20 cigarettes in your mouth.
Well, you've only got 8 there.
Yeah, well, they all fall out eventually.
Maybe it's a packet of 10.
No, it's a packet of 20, and then somebody else lights each cigarette
in order
individually.
To light them, you have to breathe in the smoke.
Yes, you do. Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, that's not very good for you, is it?
No, it's not good for you. But it was a trick thing. You know, I volunteered to do. I think it was for a charity or something.
Really?
And then of course when they start getting on fire.
Not just for attention, then.
No, it wasn't for attention. Then they all start falling out your mouth, and if you're not careful, they set fire to you and other things around you. So you have to be very careful.
Now, there's another Premier League game tonight, and 7:45 kick-off. Southampton against Spurs should be a cracker. Let's talk to Alex Crook, who's going to be there for Talk Sport. Alex.
Afternoon, guys.
Yeah,
afternoon.
So, I mean, it's the last Boxing Day fixture, I suppose, if you like, even though we're now a couple of days away from that. Are they leaving the last one the best one to last, do you think?
Well, let's hope so. I mean, Southampton have happy memories from this time of year. They beat Arsenal by 4-0 on Boxing Day last season, so I'm sure if they could follow that up with a North London double, it would be a very happy end to the festive period. But it's a big game for both clubs, in all truth, because Southampton have the chance to move into the 7 and, on the tails of the teams in the European places. And Tottenham, having seen all their top 4 rivals pick up victories already, they need to win to stay within touch of those Champions League places.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, it's been a sort of a slightly disappointing season if you're a Spurs fan so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been an up and down one. Of course, they were very disappointing in the Champions League, crashed out of that competition. And I just don't feel like they really used what happened last season and the strong position that they went into the summer in. You know, they finished 3rd last year. They were the nearest challengers to Leicester for much of the campaign. And they didn't do enough to strengthen their squad when other managers around them were doing so. So they're still heavily reliant on probably the best back 5 outside of Stamford Bridge in the Premier League and Harry Kane to score their goals. But outside of that, if Kane gets injured or suffers a lack of form, then it really is hard to see where their goals are coming from.
Yeah, I think there was a sense of non-achievement, to be honest, Alex, both for Spurs and Arsenal, because when history looks back and says, wow, Leicester won it that year, I mean, Spurs and Arsenal wasted the best opportunity in years, didn't they, to slide between the traditional top 4 teams and take that title?
They
They did, and the fact Leicester won the title by 10 points,
exactly,
makes their failings even more spectacular. Really, I don't think Tottenham will get a better chance.
That's right.
Certainly in the near future to win the Premier League, and maybe they've suffered a bit of a hangover from that. They know they underachieved last year.
I think you're right,
and they know that teams, Chelsea for one, and Manchester United who underachieved last season weren't going to perform that badly again. So I think maybe that's had a knock-on effect this season.
Yeah, I think it has.
Are you expecting any action from either of these teams in the transfer window in January?
Well, I think Tottenham still need to sign, a striker as backup to Harry Kane. I know Son has been in good form this season. The Anton experiment hasn't really worked out. Sure, if Pochettino can do so, he'd like to bring in a bit more firepower. But how much of his transfer budget has been sucked up by the rebuilding of White Hart Lane? Perhaps that's a question for the Tottenham shareholders. And in terms of Southampton, as in any transfer window, the main priority will be keeping hold of their best players, and Virgil van Dijk in particular, who's attracting a lot of interest. Rumours of a 40, 50 million pound bid from Manchester City. I don't expect him to go in January. I don't expect him to stay beyond the summer either, despite Claude Puel saying he could be there for the next 2 or 3 years. I think that's very wishful thinking. But if they can get to February the 1st and with their squad still intact, I think they'll see that as a satisfactory transfer window.
Sure. Alex, thank you very much indeed. Alex Crook there, looking ahead to Southampton Spurs tonight, 7:45 kickoff. You'll hear all the goals as they go in, indeed, if they do go in, later on tonight on Talk Sport. I saw somebody tweeted at me earlier, by the way, and I don't know whether it was tongue-in-cheek, that Spurs were having a look over at Ross Barkley to see if they could bring him to White Hart Lane.
Well, that story was reported about 10 days ago.
Yeah, no truth to it.
Well, I've no idea, but, I mean, Mr. Koeman is in a difficult position with Ross Barkley, both wants to stimulate his enormous talent and get him playing the way he wants him to be, but at the same time he's occasionally giving him a bit of a swipe and saying, look, you've got to do better. So he's managing the situation, but I've no knowledge of the fact that anybody wants to see Ross Barkley leave Everton.
No, indeed.
I certainly don't.
Now, going back to the start of the show, here's one from Patrick on Twitter. He says he may have failed, but Bob Bradley stands up and does a terrific, dignified interview on Talk Sport, which was one he did with Jim White. Didn't Hodgson try to hide? Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I don't think Roy Hodgson, in the state of his kind of pomposity, which he now is enabled to do a Premier League manager's job, because he would have to take an awful lot of criticism, not only from the fans, but from the press. He would have to stand up after every game. He would have to do press conferences before every game. He'd be under an awful lot of pressure to try and bring in players who wanted to play for him. So the idea that Roy Hodgson's even in a running for this job, I think, is absolutely ludicrous.
I think it's ludicrous. I mean, Roy Hodgson's failure was massive.
Yeah, but also his failure after the fact, where he said, I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah, I don't even know why I'm here today. And he took £14 million off the FA, and we got nothing out of it. I mean, his failure was massive. And I, like you, if I was running a football club, the last person I'd consider to come in and take over is Roy Hodgson, on the basis he's never won anything, and secondly, the way he handled himself in his last huge failure was not good.
Yes, exactly right. Now, coming up, it's Drive with Mickey Quinn and Ian Danter. We'll be back, of course, tomorrow at 1 o'clock for Porky Vision and a whole lot more.